I'm putting us on the record. If you're ready, Caesar, it's 5:59, everyone. Good evening.
Okay.
This is the Caucus of the Jersey City Municipal Council. Today's Monday, October 21st, 2019. It's 5:30 p.m. We had a 5:30 p.m. scheduled start. As I said, it's 5:59. Saving an instant or so. We're missing just Councilman Robinson, who is in the building and will be joining us shortly, I'm sure. We have 8 members of the council. To just expedite that part of the program, lead us off, Council President.
Okay, we're going to get right into it and move as expeditiously as possible. Chris Kearns and Lieutenant Fred Rodriguez, who have item number 10.6.
Gentlemen, they're not PAs, so if you don't hear yourself, it's for recordation, not for amplification. So the microphone is right where it belongs.
Got it.
Please begin.
Good evening, Councilman and Councilwoman. I'm here on behalf of the Jersey City Police Department. We're requesting expansion on our body camera program, but we would like to renew a support and maintenance for the body-worn cameras that are in place right now. Right now we have 200 cameras that are divided between the 4 districts. All our officers on each tour are equipped with body cameras and they go into service around the clock. But with those cameras being in service, there are issues that do arise that we do need to, myself, including my colleague Sergeant Johns, at times we need to get on the phone with Coban and speak with their technical support team for maintenance of the program, and also when the cameras freeze, there's an issues that arise with the cameras. We're on the phone with them promptly, and we resolve it through whether the tech remotes in with me and fixes the file, the configuration. Just a few examples that way. They're placed back in service, or some cameras are going to be RMA'd, and therefore we have to send them back to the company to get fixed. But the support is needed to continue with that process. I would like to thank you for hearing me out. That concludes that part of my discussion on the request for that bill to be paid on the renewal of the body-worn camera solution, which right now covers the date from March 1st of 2019 to February of 2020, which they have been working with us since we instituted the program back in March with the West District, and then subsequently the other 3 districts followed midsummer. So everybody's online now, and we do feel that we need the support to continue with the phone support and maintenance. Thank you.
Okay,
Any questions?
let's open it up for questions. Council members on Resolution 10.6.
On the system, 10.6 is different on mine.
Yes, it is.
That is different. That's why we need them here.
On you, are you
10.6, what
10.6?
did you get on the system?
Resolution authorizing award of a contract to Coban Technologies
See,
for
it's
purchase of
different.
Okay.
cameras,
I have that.
It's
software.
different, I'm telling you.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it too, and
It's
I
different.
thought, I'm grateful it's just ours, because
Yeah, mine.
there's still bugs being worked out in this council.
What do you have there,
members.
Chris?
I have a mortgage.
So, Council
discharge.
President, can I?
It's from the 23rd?
Yeah,
10/20.
let me go back and I'll go out and come back in.
We're here
Let
to,
me move.
we're here to speak
Okay.
on more,
See,
but
I'm not
Yeah.
I'm on
blowing
the
you.
assumption it's just the
Can I-
technical support.
Okay, Councilman Yun.
There is a request. for
Folks, can we
80
get your attention? Councilman Yun?
Okay, officer, so total contract is $77,000. That include 80 additional camera?
Hold it and come back in.
You're correct, Councilman. When we checked in, all I saw was what I have for the renewal of the contract. But there was a request made by Director Moody with the support of Director Shea and Chief Kelly for the purchase of 80 more cameras, which I'm able to speak about if I can elaborate. We have 200 cameras out that was initially purchased in the past, and those are in service. We want to expand the program with outfitting more of our units. Example, ESU, and also possibly other units that Chief Kelly and Director Shea
Supervisors and
agree
things like
on.
that.
So those 80 more cameras will expand the amount of officers that are going to be outfitted with the body cameras.
So now,
So
let me ask you this way then. So now, we have out there is a 200 camera, now you're gonna purchase an additional 80 more camera.
Correct.
That actually serves the plus maintenance service. So my question is that, we had the last time had some concern about issues, body cameras, the storage, the data storage issue. So
Correct.
now, $77,000 are not included the data storage cost,
No.
it's separate.
Currently, Director Baker has storage equipped for it, but as time goes on and as we record more footage and obviously as stuff is saved to the server and as things are needed to be saved long-term, we're going to need to expand on storage as well. So that is something that the council will need to account for.
So far, it's how they manage the storage of the data. That's one of the major, one of the highest ticket items in the city council now.
I'm sorry, what was the question, sir?
So the storage that all the data
Yes.
is not cheap, pretty expensive.
No, it's not.
So now, how are you guys going to be managing that? You know,
Well, currently we're managing it in-house. It's being stored locally. So I think the plan is still, Director Baker has been doing a good job of continuously requesting from all of you money to upgrade the storage. So as time's gone on, he's continuously every year expanded our storage. So I imagine with the upcoming budget, he'll be doing that again, and part of his budget should be expanding the storage of that as well.
Chris, how long do you store this stuff for?
Currently 100 days, but depending upon certain Attorney General guidelines, it may be longer. And at the 100 days, certain things can still be chosen to be preserved longer, depending upon what it be, or what it is, sorry.
Okay, any other questions on this? There are two account numbers listed here for the, within the body of the resolution. Lists account numbers beginning with 17-289. And in the fact sheet, it lists a different account number beginning with 16-290. Can we just get clarification on which account is being utilized and if we get the balance on that and...
Yeah, I'll get clarification on that, and I can get the two, absolutely.
Okay, anyone else have questions?
So for the 88 additional cameras, are the cameras assigned to an officer or are they rotated among?
Shift. So the way it usually works, and the lieutenant's more familiar than I am, but it's typically, we have enough cameras so shifts are covered, and then there's always enough back on the docks charging, so an on-off, and they're assigned per shift.
Okay. And is the 88, how like comprehensive does that coverage get?
It's 80, but the 80 is going to, the 80 is going to just, it's more about expanding to other units and things like you said, like, it's going to be to start with other units, and I'm sure as we continue to expand, there may be a request for more body cameras as we test the other units.
Where are they now and where would they be?
Currently, they're on all our patrol.
So all,
The 200 or the 80?
well, both.
The 200 cameras are basically divided between the 4 districts accordingly. The West District has the most because there's more officers being put out per shift, such as the evening tour. We have the evening tour officers being put out. We have the new officers under the walking program that's implemented in the West and the South District. Captain Nestor has his PC outfitted with the body cameras, and the flex unit also is outfitted. So the West District takes up most of the inventory, and that's also a need to be increased because right now there's currently 62 cameras assigned to the West. The North and the East, they have 32, but that's really what the allotment allows, and the South has 48. I held some of them back in the body camera office, so when there is one placed out of service by one of the officers, because, you know, like I said earlier, there's issues that arise, we'll get that camera and then we'll use our inventory to replace it. So right now, the West does need an increase in body cameras, but then we're looking to go and expand further with the Like the example I gave you with DSU is a topic with the chief and the director's office,
So
correct?
now, as Councilman Solomon mentioned, the last time when they have some instant housing project area, those who sign housing project area should not actually carry the body cam. So at the time, our question is that why they not provide that the police who work the housing project area, they should provide the body cam also.
At the time, if we're referring to the,
issue and concern, they should provide, but they provide the other district, as you say, like a 200, but at the time, the body cam was not available. Police who assigned the housing project. We're going to make sure that this additional 80 camera to some allocated, the officer who do that job, off-duty job or on-duty job of the housing project too.
I can absolutely, I'll speak to the director, and both Director Shea and Director Moody, I can't speak for them, but I'll absolutely speak to them about it and, voice your concerns and make sure that they're aware. Everyone here said,
But just tell them,
that
it's not only myself, actually council at
No,
the time,
council-
we all question that why they not provide
correct, to the housing.
on or off the police officer housing project.
Especially
No, and
Yeah.
I'll mention of the 80 that you would specifically like to see some allocated to them as well.
Please, okay?
Of course.
All right. That's it.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, I appreciate it.
All right, good.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Party, Chris.
Take care. Thank you.
thank you for your time.
I will.
Yeah, remember.
Okay, council members, we're going to bring up Tanya, who has 2 items. Do you want to start with the ordinance or the resolution?
The rest will be in there then.
The resolution first?
Yep.
So that's resolution 10.4, council members. That's a resolution authorizing the planning board to conduct preliminary investigation of conditions of the area known as the 6th Street Embankment Study Area, determine if such area meets the criteria to be declared an area in need of redevelopment and/or an area in need of rehabilitation.
Tanya, could I ask you something? They say need of rehabilitation. The average house down there on that block sells for $1 million, $2 million. Where do they get the nerve to come out and say need of rehabilitation? I'm not going after you, Tanya, but it's ridiculous.
There's no houses there.
Huh?
There's no houses there.
No, but on 6th Street there is going down. property
On the
for
other,
the
you
fourth.
mean, yeah, on the other side.
What do you say?
On the other side. This is just in particular to the embankment.
Yeah, the
No
embankment.
homes or anything.
But they say in need of rehabilitation. But when the property there is selling for millions, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
So then, let me ask you, add to the question. that-
Why don't we let Tanya explain
Yeah, go ahead.
the ordinance first,
So if
the
you,
resolution, rather.
if you have the map in front of you, the map that we sent to you, there's 8 blocks within the study. If you're looking at the map and you're looking at your left, that's block 8. You're looking at your right, that's block 1. The block 1 and maybe block 2, it's arguable, are currently in 2 different redevelopment plans. And the rest of it is zoned R1. It's historically and still is the Harsimus Branch Railroad line. It's still a railroad line, even though the railroad itself is not active. We are looking, as you may or may not know, I'm assuming you do know, from settlements in the past, that in order to develop on Block 1, the owner would have to dedicate blocks 2 through 8 to turn into a park, and preserve the embankment, and also preserve possible light rail connections. So in order to do that, we have to keep everything within the same boundary area so that they're all connected, so that the bonuses are connected to the development. And that's really kind of as simple as it is. You know, this is the very early stage of it when we're just kind of authorizing the planning board to even look at this.
So you're talking about 11602.
11602 is block 1. Yep,
Okay, that's the block 1.
Lot 1.
Yeah.
it's also lot 1, yes.
So all those things to study, you're gonna call that they're like a public community input meeting, correct?
the term area in need of redevelopment and area in need of rehab are terms that are defined within the land use law. And there's criteria that fall under them that who's ever doing the study has to determine that based on the study, whether they meet one or two or most of those criteria. And then they take a study report based on their, study of the site itself on whether you're in the field or you're doing tax research, it's ownership title issues, blighted is really some of the terms that you'll hear more often. And then they present the case to the planning board, and the planning board decides whether or not it does meet the criteria for either area in need of redevelopment or area in need of rehab. And then we bring it to you, and you guys kind of also reiterate what the planning board said. And then we move forward with writing the redevelopment plan. The designation is what keeps it within redevelopment, and it also keeps the redevelopment powers there, so that when there are things like community benefits, those are easier for us to kind of get on top of. If there's redevelopment agreements that are attached to them or settlements, the redevelopment powers allow us to follow that a lot better.
So now, you have a different stage to the processing for redevelopment area. Which stage you going to give the opportunity to the community so they can some input to their concern or issues or wish? Which stage will be?
In 45 minutes. I have to go to a meeting tonight where the Embankment Coalition is presenting at Great Smith Forest to, I believe, I'm not 100% sure if it's just Smith Cove or if it's other downtown associations, and it's the start of the conversation, so the community is going to be involved right away.
The reason I'm asking you, one of the agenda we talk about R2D, which is Palisade Avenue,
Right.
and which is involved the word C and D.
Yeah.
When I ask you to come up, make a presentation to, give some property owner, whichever you go, let me put it this way, any redevelopment plan directly, indirectly impact the property value and the quality of life. I'm not the professional expert of either the Councilman James, Richard Bojana too. When they have a community meeting, your department should show up, explain to a resident in that area. But your email response to us, you guys have no overtime money, so you cannot able to send to actually nobody from your office. I was so get upset because when we talk a 2019 budget, you have some overtime budget. So
Yeah.
you have to present to this
And you
council.
cut $5,000 of it.
Yes.
There's no, that's a black and white argument, so that's
This is
why
me.
I'm here tonight, because I'm a salaried employee.
No, not Tanya, but
I don't know, what does this have to do with it?
Councilman, yes.
she have to make it clear, because why? When you put in the $5,000 overtime, then you should tell this council that $5,000 overtime we're gonna spend for our team to go out response to community meeting. At the time you told us we have a short of manpower to ask us increase, hire more person. That's why we city council 2019 when you talk about budget, actually you remember that, we increased your budget to hire extra person.
No,
Your
we didn't.
department, which you go look at it,
No, you didn't.
have to have an overtime, some decent amount in your overtime, your account. So, or to any community meeting, you can prove somebody to show up, explain to community. But now, you say you only $5,000, so any community meeting, if you also not able to send somebody in that meeting, and just ignore that meeting, I think it's not fair to people who resident of Georgia City. Because as I say, any redevelopment plan, directly, indirectly, to gonna be impact quality of life and their property value. If we talk about those important issues, your office should be sent to somebody, not lawyer or petitioner. We want to hear from the city of Jersey City, not from the petitioner, okay? So we gotta make clear that, so whatever we will do that, business as usual, you gotta make sure that.
Are you speaking specifically about this one, or?
No, we're
or-
talking about.
No,
something
Palisades?
ahead.
Yes.
Okay.
So general public.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with.
Yeah, let's move on. Look,
Yeah.
I understand your point.
Business as usual, we gotta make sure that.
Sure,
I
sure.
don't want the whole office say, we cannot send to nobody.
Yeah, well-
Because of that, there's no overtime.
We'll discuss that separately. I saw the
Yeah,
email about
let's
it.
Tanya?
complete the conference.
Yeah.
Folks, councilmen, both of you, I'm sorry. Let's complete the conversation about this, and then you can have questions about the Palisade Avenue situation. Okay, I apologize. I got lost a little bit there. What's, question specifically about this particular,
Yeah, I have a question.
okay.
Tanya, it goes into Ward C, goes back to the cemetery and everything. You're going to Harsimus Cove tonight, right?
That
You
goes
said-
into Ward
Did you
C?
say you're going to a meeting at Harsimus?
That doesn't end at your, that's still not within your ward?
So
Yeah, a good part of it is when they come.
The
I
western,
mean, the thing is,
the western boundary of this plan?
well, so the western boundary of this plan in front of us is right at the edge of E and C. However, there's been, I guess, the Harsmas branch goes up to, I guess what's called that checkpoint
To Waldo, right.
That does go into C, and that's not included in this map in front of us.
No, it's not currently included tonight also. That's
Well, You
intentional.
could tell them, I want to know 3 questions. It's going to cost probably $40 million to $60 million to put back the bridges, clean up the contamination, and then when they get up to the cemetery, there's Revolutionary War graves under those bridges there. They're not touching them.
I don't know what
So just to
the,
inform these people downtown that when they come up, they're not touching any of that. And I'm very familiar with this whole thing because I'm friends with Hyman's, well, he died, his wife, and I'm very involved in this whole thing.
the area west of where this plan ends up to Waldo is a little complicated.
Very
So we're not,
complicated.
I mean, our intention is to look into it, but it's not to really progress right now because we have,
And Tanya, you're the best.
Hold on a minute, Tanya.
Okay.
I think that this case is settled.
No,
it's
no,
not settled.
It's far from
Not
settled.
yet?
No.
So to that end, may I ask from the law department, because we did have closed sessions about this matter, it's not settled, as the councilman suggested. So how much of this is open for discussion at this point, since this is kind of moving forward here in terms of public discourse? Obviously, you're having a public meeting about it.
Right.
And so how much of the negotiations, I guess, are members of the council, but also staff and other folks able to disclose? For my part, I've been mum on the whole thing at this point, and would like to get some guidance since we're at this stage now.
To this point, anything regarding litigation or negotiation regarding litigation that were discussed in the closed session, that is still confidential. The litigation has not resolved yet. For purposes of the presentation today, the specific ask of the council, you can ask Tanya any questions you need to ask specific to that. But anything stated in the closed caucus is still confidential and is not ready to be released to the public yet because it is still ongoing litigation.
Council President, then what is the sense to we designate this area?
It's
That
very,
area.
yeah, it's incredibly challenging then inside of that, right? Because the last line of bullet point 1 on the first page reads, it ends with, which shall include the said property within the plan and possibly incorporate adjacent property from adjacent redevelopment plan areas. And I'm not sure exactly what, as you were pertaining to, as it extends into Ward C and so forth, is that the adjacent
So if-
areas that we're talking about, as well as other areas?
If this is the boundary that you approved, that's the only thing that I can, that's the only thing that I can study. I can only study what you authorize.
And what about the adjacent property from adjacent redevelopment plan areas?
I'm not 100% sure if that's, you're talking about, is that the whereases?
It's in the first page of the resolution, at least the first page on my electronic version. It starts with numeral number 1, under the now therefore be resolved, and that's the final sentence in that
Right.
number 1.
There have been times, I guess, where it has come back and there's need to include more because there was, you go to the site and you realize that there's another block that's empty. So what it would require me to do is to come back here, to come back with another resolution to authorize that additional area along with this. I wouldn't be able to go to the planning board and then say, we think blocks 1 through 8, and then some stuff over here also meets all the designations, so can you designate it? I'd almost have to start all the way back at 0.
I have one question, Director. How do we vote on this if the litigation is still ongoing? Like, why would we move, I guess, put the cart before the horse?
Right.
So the current zoning talks about a settlement that happened in 2012.
Sounds right.
And that zoning refers to the development of Block 1 as long as Blocks 2 through 8 are dedicated to the city in fee simple. But those blocks were never included within the boundary, most likely because the litigation continued on, and there were a lot of parties that had to come to the table in order to reach a settlement. This is our chance, I think, at this point, because we think we're far enough along in the settlement that it's reasonable for us to even start going to the community to start talking about what we want to do on this site and for the rest of the block, to make sure that kind of like getting all of the things done that you need to get done so you can actually do the thing that you need to do. Does that make any sense, right? Like, we just need to make sure that we save some time and save some steps. So this just gives you the ability to authorize us to do a study, and then it gives us the ability to say this whole area meets the area in need of designation. And so when things start moving faster, we don't have to take another 2 or 3, sometimes 4 months to incorporate into that schedule.
So their study gonna done by in-house, right?
Yes, no, it's all done in-house. We have to, it's an area in need study, so.
And it's not gonna move fast, because I said there's contamination, it's gonna take ages and ages. We'll all be gone by the time this ever comes to fruition.
Speak for yourself.
Right.
I wasn't including you, Bob.
Councilman Robinson,
What are you
folks.
getting out of the meeting tonight? Because ultimately, we have to vote on this Wednesday, right? So you're going down to where, I don't know where you said you was going tonight, to the meeting, Parsons tonight, right?
Yeah,
And
it's
so,
right to Morris Church.
how do we get that information back? Is it something that the councilman from the area will get? Like, how did the meeting go? What did they say? Did they want this? Did they not want it?
Well, I mean, the Embankment Coalition is the community. Like, I understand that it's maybe slightly confusing because of the role that they've played in this time, but they are residents, they are the community. They're the group that have kind of been on the front of this. We have involved a councilman pretty early on. He does know all of the things that we're kind of talking about and dealing with. I mean, I'm at a weird place to, I think, fully answer your question, that or I don't fully understand your question, but I don't want to talk about necessarily what the settlement thing is. I'm not sure, how's that for an answer? I know we'll go tonight and we'll talk about the details of the settlement, and I don't know if that means that it's public information now or it's not. That's not above my pay grade.
No, I'm just asking, you said the councilman.
Right, I mean,
The councilman has been a part of the discussions
Whatever you want me to
we
do,
having,
I'll
so
do.
I don't know how we vote on it. I guess I'll just meet with the councilman tomorrow, or we'll try to,
the idea is that it warrants a study. And you think that you think that it even warrants us looking into whether or not it meets anything and should be studied. That's really all it is. It's like permission to go ahead and study it.
I don't think anything is strictly new, as far as I know, in the last first caucus the council had about this. So I think everyone on the council kind of knows what it's there, and I guess it's the kind of choice of the administration to make that public, the potential terms of the settlement. If they're doing that today, then that's public. And this doesn't mean we accept the settlement, this just means we are authorizing the study.
Is that a public meeting tonight, or is that a closed things meeting?
Pretty sure it's public, yeah.
So I would express-
It tends to announce at that meeting, but if they're announcing the details, then they're announcing the details.
Tanya, how could they announce details when we up in C and D do not know anything about this? This is like the bike lanes, you know. Wow. What was the?
We had a closed caucus, I mean.
We had a closed
We had
caucus.
a caucus that, we're talking about tonight's meeting, what these people want to be decided.
The Embankment Coalition.
Yeah.
Technically it's the Embankment Coalition's meeting.
Who are they?
The Embankment Coalition?
Yeah, who are they?
They're the
They were in the last closed caucus.
Are they all from downtown?
yeah, well, no.
The board has members.
There's some folks from Journal Square on there.
They are?
Yeah, absolutely.
News to me. I guess we have another bike lane situation.
What's important about this is that we are consistent with our policy on bonuses, which is that the there's a clear connection between the added density and the bonus provision, and if it's all within the same redevelopment plan, which is what planning and our law department has kind of been taking home, so this way there aren't any what they call quid pro quo, like there's no question about it. It's very clear, this is all within the redevelopment plan. In order to get the extra density, you are dedicating this land to be simple and maybe even doing some park improvements there yourself.
Okay.
So my question and concern is just, so while we discussed this in closed caucus and other closed session, and discussed some of the specifics around the potential settlement, which I won't get into, but I think I can probably safely say that I'm not necessarily in agreement, right? So my concern is that as it's presented, and this is my first time seeing the kind of the boundaries of what's being defined there, that relegates the settlement and the solutions without me saying much more about that, right? So, and so the idea of going north and south and further west as well could expand kind of what a potential settlement looks like. That's all I'll say about that, and without getting into a whole lot of details around that. And so, since it's being discussed tonight, I'd really like the law department to provide a legal memo on this, because I got a lot to say on this whole subject at this point, and I think I've got a lot of useful things to say about the entire topic, but have felt a little hamstrung at this point onto what could be said, because I've been sworn to secrecy as and confidentiality in this matter, and I'm not directly involved in negotiations. So I think there's plenty of opportunities here, and so my concern here is just kind of the boundaries. And so while I think it's, and I also would just suggest that to Councilman Boggiano's point about like who's at the table on this matter.
We're watching TV.
With all due respect, and I think obviously the Embankment Coalition deserves all the respect in the world, and they've carried the water for a long time on this. And but this is literally this embankment is truly a citywide asset, right? So for everyone from the south side of Jersey City and Greenville to downtown, to the Heights and the west side. So there are benefits and opportunities here for the entire city, and I would like to see throughout this process that other stakeholders be able to be made aware of it and be able to be brought to the table. As I said, I'm completely prepared to, and I've talked at length with the Embankment Coalition and as well about this, and then told them that we should have another meeting on this matter as well. And certainly their voice weighs very heavily, but I think the rest of the city should be aware of what's possible here and what the opportunities are if we're going through this process. And I guess my question is, like, as you do undergo this investigation, at what point would other communities be able to participate in this beyond kind of the current stakeholders who are involved in the litigation itself?
I assume tonight, right?
Is the
I assume tonight would be the door opening.
The door opening.
Yes.
And then how long does this process entail before we come back with potential? What's the next step after this?
So, I guess just for, transparency, I have not been involved in the litigation. I've not been involved in any of the settlement conversations. That's really been, I think, the people who've met you in closed session, which is Anicia and Peter Baker, and the Embankment Coalition. So, the idea is that I think that we would try to come to you with this quickly. So, because I'm under the impression, especially that if there's a meeting tonight with the Embankment Coalition, kind of talking to the communities, that the settlement is far enough along that we would want to make sure that the things that we have to do, that we're responsible for as a city, which is the area need study and the designation, are done. And then I think and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're talking more about really is the redevelopment plan. And that's,
but this sets the basis for that.
Correct,
level, right?
correct. This just allows us to create that plan. And I'm assuming that since the conversation is starting tonight, the conversation citywide is open. But again, I haven't been dealing with that litigation, so I don't want to
Tanya, you go into the meeting tonight, can't you request, with the, embankment that they reach out to other, organizations, as far as the planning, because this is just the first meeting.
Correct.
This is gonna be some time.
Correct. I think that that's their intention.
Okay.
I think that that's their
But
intention.
mention that we're concerned about that as a council.
Yes, no, absolutely. And
Yeah, they will.
I'm sure they know that that's what they need to
Right.
do in order to get buy-in.
Tanya, is Taco part of that conversation?
I don't know.
I didn't want to get specific about it,
But
but
see, that's my
go
whole
south
thing.
and north, it's,
It's
yes.
a difference.
There are
That's why
communities
she's
that
going
surround
there.
this,
She could mention it, that is our concern, so,
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I'll bring it up.
Let's put it this way. I think a planning department puts extra effort to reach out not only specific Black social organization, but I think that they put effort to reach out to general public. Most Black association maybe covers some small area, you know what I'm saying? So even though you see the word D, you have like a 4 different Black association, but almost 50,000 people, their members in the four Blacks are added together, a couple hundred. So almost like 40,000 people didn't get informed that any major change, you know what I'm saying? So please, we gotta find some way to reach out to more general public, not only certain Black association, okay? So those kind of things, I know that it's a funding issue. Please speak with us, okay? So we try to make sure that you fully plan department of functioning to reach out to general public. That's what I'm trying to say before. All right?
okay.
Council President, remember your request from the law department to discuss the left and right limits and what you can discuss publicly based upon the closed session and what's going to be made available publicly tonight? Is that what you're looking for?
Say it again?
You're looking for the left and right limits and what you can speak about publicly and not given the
North, south, east,
confidentiality.
and west, the whole,
Well,
yeah.
what I'm talking about is what has been discussed confidentially within the confines of a closed session, and then what may be released to the public tonight.
Tonight, right.
So I think that's what you're looking for.
Correct.
Is some of those things that are released tonight, you did talk about in a closed session, but then can you talk about that with your constituents and with each other moving forward? That's what you're looking for, as I understand it?
Yes, so whatever's tonight.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Tanya, we move on to your next item?
Sure. I'm also here for NJCU amendment, but the petitioner is also here, represented with the,
Sure.
their experts, and they're
bring up the team
probably
from NJCU?
really the best to,
We have the team from New Jersey City University step forward for,
What is that,
this is ordinance 3.1. It's amendments to the NJCU West Campus redevelopment plan.
Are they paying taxes?
We have the,
You know, saying, yeah.
have everyone introduce themselves.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Jennifer Mazaway, I'm with the law firm Genova Burns. I represent NJCU. I've been before the council before with regard to the West Campus and some other projects for NJCU. I have other members of our team here available if there are questions, in particular from any council members. I have our Chief Financial Officer and Vice President Aaron Aska from the university, as well as the university's consultant, Anthony Bastardi, as well as our planner, Charles Haight from Dresner Robin. The redevelopment plan amendment is seeking to change the mix of uses on a particular block in the West Campus. It's Block 4. The redevelopment plan has not been amended since 2010. This would be the first amendment to this plan since 2010. A couple of the highlights of the Block 4 part of the campus overall is that it will ultimately house the Performing Arts Center, where the Joffrey Ballet is slated to come to Jersey City, leaving New York City. Also a center for music, dance, and theater, and they will partner with the university to offer a degree program, restaurants, as well as a residential tower. And it is the inclusion of the residential tower here that is really the crux of the amendment request. So there are a number of community benefits that are also a part of the application, the amendment before the council, including a number of affordable housing units on site. There will be 24 units on site with a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms. as well as community benefits tied directly to the Center for Music, Dance, and Theater and the Performing Arts Center. And I believe the council should have before them a pretty robust and substantial list of what those community benefits are. Certainly could talk about any particular ones. And ultimately, the university would have to enter into an agreement with the city or with the JCRA as appropriate to kind of codify, if you will, those community benefits as well.
So they're going to make a presentation?
Well, Councilman, that's my general presentation. I'm happy to answer questions. We do have one rendering with us of
can we see it?
Yeah, sure. And ultimately, just so the council knows, we're here tonight for an amendment. We would ultimately have to go for site plan approval at the planning board. So what we're showing you is conceptual, and it's pretty far along, but we would ultimately have to get an approval from the planning board. So. So this is, again, on the West Campus. It is what we call Block 4. And you can see in the rear, that is the ShopRite parcel that fronts on 440. And that already has approval. The construction has not begun yet, but that already has an approval. This is University Place Boulevard. And then on what would be kind of off the page, over here there is the university's current new student housing that they built. There is also and then two mixed-use residential buildings. That one is fully open, it's called the Rivet, and the second one, which is slated to open within the next couple of weeks. And those were created by way of public-private partnerships with the university through use of the state statute that has since sunsetted. And there's a new one in place, although they're still waiting regulations. So just to orient the council. This is Block 4. Again, kind of off-page will be a public plaza that will be ultimately dedicated to the city, that is being built by the university. This is the proposed Performing Arts Center, the Center for Music, Dance, and Theater, which will house a university program, and then the residential behind it.
So like, let me ask, amend, what is amend, the height, the density?
Yes, so currently this particular block calls for only the educational uses and the restaurants, but not for the housing on this particular block.
So how many units of housing you're talking about?
343.
343 housing units. Right?
Correct.
So now, how many,
the residential sits, I believe, atop of the school. So the first 2 floors are school and Performing Arts Center, and then I believe it's 9 stories of residential above that.
Okay, now 9 stories, right? 340. So housing is 343 is a market value, right?
There's 24 affordable units on that as well.
24, not even 10%.
7%.
Why not 20%?
Well, the economics of the project don't work with 20%. We did model a number of different scenarios. The best way to get a mix of units, which would include 2-bedroom units, which I know was something that was important to the council people. In order to get the 2-bedroom units on, that was the number that ultimately the project could support. And that's 14 studios, 5 1-bedrooms, 5 2-bedrooms, which is also consistent, frankly, with the mix of the building. The building actually has probably more studios than anything, because the market has shown that that's what's primarily being rented down even at the Rivet, which is where they have their most recent data from the project that's open already on University Place.
You said 5 2-bedrooms?
5 2-bedrooms, 5 1-bedrooms, and 14 studios.
Still far less than what we expect, really.
But there are a host of other community benefits as well, so...
Okay, so would you tell us that, what is the other variety of community benefits?
Sure.
And not only just a list of the benefit, please tell us what is your market cash value will be.
Sure. Well, I mean, At the very basic, the property is, right now, would be zero tax revenue because it's an educational use and owned by the university. So if no other benefit, there's about a $1.7 million in the first year tax revenue benefit to the city. Then we, again, on top of that, we also have the affordable housing units. And then, Tony, do you want to talk about the community benefits, or do you want me to? Okay.
But the present value of the tax benefit is in excess of that.
So when we extrapolate the present value of that tax benefit over, I think we did 50 years, was approximately $52 million over the course of 50 years. So a number of the benefits, and the university did sit down with different stakeholders within the city as well to create the list of different things. Part of it is an arts-based subsidy program, making performance and exhibition space available to local arts organizations, nonprofits, schools. Other parts of it include free programs for students, Jersey City students, Jersey City Board of Education K-12 students, an outdoor summer art series in the plaza, cultural heritage celebrations, collaborations with other arts and cultural organizations in Jersey City, a community music school to provide students from across the region with a well-rounded music curriculum and education. Obviously, the recruitment of the Joffrey Ballet is a significant portion, and I know there have been discussions about how we can utilize their presence here to also, whether it's go into the schools or have schools come to us to get the benefits of
So
those.
those kind of program benefit going to provided by NJCU?
Correct.
NJCU not even provide decent education for Henry Moore School. Every damn years, they put in the pink slip to every teachers, and they scare the parents like a hell, and the kids. They haven't provided decent service for Henry Moore School. Now, you guys are up here talk about all the community benefit.
Which services are you talking
It's
about?
not a separate issue because it's connected together. Because in other words, you guys are talking about the community benefit based on what your NJCU provide. Community benefit not even provide a decent service for Henry Moore School. People who need a real service education. And over the years, NJCU every years before holiday they give the pink slip to every teachers. And you us to trust that what they talk promise that their community benefit. Come on.
Well, respectfully, I do think the issues are different.
Because you know why?
Okay, let's let her complete her response.
No, I do think the issues are different. They're not tied to one another. But the fact is that the university has for many years and is continuing to provide services at the Henry Moore School. So it's not as though that has gone away.
Let me ask you about, you said they're gonna provide a music school. Could you get into details of that? That's part of the give back.
Sure, and Councilwoman, I apologize because I don't have that level of detail. I think probably somebody from the university might be better equipped, and perhaps that's something we could do. If the council was inclined to move to second reading, I could potentially have somebody answer to some of that. Sure. So I can speak generally about them, but I really can't get into too much of a detail about
So
any
then let me
particular.
ask this one. We give them like a 3 long-term tax away to provide NJCU private and public partnership. We did that. At the time, the president of NJCU promised to us at this city council, if we give the 30 years tax abatement, they're going to provide debt-free education for every student who take education in NJCU. I'd like to get some record. How many kids get benefit out of the tax abatement? How many kids has a debt-free education they receive till today?
That's right.
Hold on, folks. We have a Vice President Aaron
You know what? I'm not feel comfortable.
Okay, we're gonna.
Councilman, and again, I think that is, again, I'll say, different issue than what we're here for, but I do have the CFO and Vice President of the University, Aaron Asker. He can speak to the issue of the debt-free promise.
All right, good afternoon, I'm Aaron Asker, I'm the Chief Operating Officer. So
Could I kindly ask you to repeat your name?
Aaron Asker.
Got you. Thank you, Aaron.
Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. So the debt-free promise program was launched about 3 or 4 years ago. It's not every student is eligible.
Based on income.
It's based on income. So if you're from a household of about 40,000 or 60,000 and below, and after you receive the Pell, which is the state financial aid, and the federal financial aid and the state financial aid tag, whatever unmet need, the foundation will underwrite that difference. So most of our students, 70% of our students are already eligible for Pell. About 60% of our undergraduate are eligible for Pell and tag. So it's really a small amount of students who have this unmet need. So if a student has both Pell, federal, and tag, and still has a gap in their cost of education, the university underwrites the difference completely.
So how many so far students get benefit out of it?
I don't have exactly the amount of students, but as I said,
Could we get that number?
yeah, we can get that number. I
Yes,
can bring
please.
that number. I can get that number.
When we give the 30 tax abatement, that was one of the exchange, you know what I'm saying? So we try to make sure kids from the Jersey City get debt-free education, you know, that's the one, actually we do that, you know, 30 tax abatement. Because reason I bring up all those issues, because of them unfeel comfortable regarding for NJCU, what they promised it, and they're looking for amendment and redevelopment, they're going to provide what they promised as the variety community benefit, you understand? Because we just want to make sure they're part of it. And so I'm not against the project itself, but we want to make sure that what you promised to us, are you delivering what you do that to us? You know, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Let me listen.
Thank you, Councilman.
If you just share your name for the record.
Anthony Bastardi, and I am a special advisor to NJCU for a number of real estate-oriented projects, including the ones that we were talking about that got approved a few years ago with the pilots. So let me say that I'm also a director of the NJCU Foundation. I sit on that board of directors and help the university raise money. So let me say that in addition to what Aaron just told you, that almost all of the students take advantage of this debt-free policy. The President, Sue Henderson, is committed to that policy, and certainly the NJCU Foundation, which is the organization, it's a private organization, a not-for-profit, that raises money to help NJCU, particularly with scholarships. And I'm a director there. The NJCU Foundation is also committed to the debt-free policy. Finally, you should know that not 5 cents of revenue has come to NJCU from those pilots. In other words, those pilots were granted and take effect when the buildings are complete and occupied. We're building, well, we have built 2 of them. We're building the other 2 now, and the ShopRite will start early next year. NJCU has yet to collect $1 of rent and is still performing on that debt-free promise. So when the pilots do take effect and those private developers start paying money to NJCU, which we believe will be in 2021, it will begin, that will just make it even easier, economically easier for NJCU to fulfill that debt-free promise. But we're fulfilling it right now, even without that revenue. So the pilots were well spent. With respect to this project, it will generate in year 1 a $1.7 million tax rateable, no pilot, a tax rateable. And that rateable, as Council mentioned, has a present 50-year value of approximately $52 million. The gross value of that tax stream over 50 years is north of $80 million. So there's a significant financial benefit coming out of rezoning this, if you will, for more than just the academic piece. But the academic piece is important. It's the piece that will bring arguably the finest ballet school in the world to Jersey City. Joffrey Ballet students come from all over the globe by audition. They do auditions, 10,000 auditions every year to select just a couple hundred students. Those young, talented performers will be working, living, and studying in Jersey City, and they'll be teaching some of our school children. this public benefits program that council mentioned will involve Joffrey Ballet teachers teaching our elementary and high school students dance, either at this new Performing Arts Center or in some instances, Councilwoman, at the public schools. All of that detail still needs to be worked out, but we've met several times now with Board of Ed and with certain community groups about the program. So just wanted to, kind of set the stage here for NJCU's willingness to live up to their promises.
So then, why don't we do this way? That what you make a presentation, it's not by PA, it's not by MOU, they should be on the contract. If this council approve that amendment to that project, then part of the contract, not the MOU, make it clear that those kind of service provide, if you open to that theater for the Jersey City at least twice a year, 3 times a year, from the country, make sure they provide, and also part of the bright community service. And I want to make sure that Handy Morris is a part of that, the community benefit. So we don't want to hear that again and again every year, holiday time, because teachers complain they receive the pink slip anymore. So enough is enough. Already I heard that more than 8 years straight. I mean, this is insane, really.
Yeah.
So
Well, look at
Councilperson Ridley?
They are entering into an official agreement, like they've already agreed to do RDA. They don't have a problem with more than a memorandum of understanding. They'll enter into a contract with the community benefits.
So,
And also, A. Harry Moore, just to speak about it, obviously the full council wasn't there, but there were some of us that met with A. Harry Moore when we had this last issue to discuss not closing the school, and that's how we got to where we are now. But bear in mind that that building is very old, and it's not the responsibility of NJCU to maintain that building.
It's part of the
So
Jersey
they
City
are
Public
still-
Schools.
It's Jersey Public
Yeah.
Schools. So they are still teaching those A. Harry Moore kids, but they can't teach them in that building.
so we understand, but the actual pink slip received by, that's issued by NJCU. So now, not only that, the only affordable housing, we talked about at least 20% affordable housing, we go down to 7%. So I think business administration,
That building will be around 100 years from now.
the representative lawyers say that it's not profitable if you go close to 20%. Not feasible.
Not feasible.
Okay, not feasible. So we like to know what is the actually the both party. I don't want you to get anybody hurt to your side, our side, or anybody's side. What is the reasonable percentage of more above the 7%?
Yeah.
We gotta find out some.
Yeah.
NW finance company provide some financial analysis.
Financial
what is-
analysis was requested.
Yes.
Yeah.
That without providing, I'm not feel comfortable because of only the builder market, only 343 units, only 24 is affordable housing. Actually, those areas, and especially short in those areas, need affordable housing more unit than anybody else. You know what I'm saying? So 24 out of 300.
Every part of the city.
That's not
Okay.
Not just on the southwest side of the city. You have to spread it
I
across
changed the
entire
word.
city.
There's something in office, every project that we've done in
All
Oregon
right.
has had
I'm
affordable.
gonna change it. Everybody's in need of
We're the
affordable
only
housing. All right,
place in the
good,
city
all right.
doing affordable right now.
I mean, we talked about that the
Yeah.
college kids need it more than anybody.
Okay.
So I like to have some kind of a percentage.
Yes.
It's not the 24, I mean, the 7%, more higher numbers you can provide the city of Jersey.
And across the street, just for the record, across the street, we have Bayfront, which has the potential for over 8,000 units. It has to be 35% affordable. So, I mean, we're not at a deficit of affordable housing or building affordable housing in that area of the city.
Yeah.
What's the current zoning for? The zoning?
Current zoning is just for academic use.
Yeah.
So no homes?
No. Now, city planning is here, and I think that Tanya could opine on whether or not this is good planning, but we've met on numerous occasions. It is good planning. It makes a lot of sense. What we've created here is a, kind of a robust, energy-filled college town with housing for both students and young working families, restaurants, now a theater and a performing arts center, a public plaza, which NJCU is building and will turn over to the city. All of this, it just makes a lot of good planning sense to have this centerpiece of both housing and performing arts and food. We have furnished financial projections to both NW, who just hasn't digested them yet, and to a few of the council people that worked with us, and they had outside counsel. And I could assure you that the 24 units that we have there was stretching the limits for this kind of high-rise construction on the west side. And why is that? It's simple. The cost of high-rise construction has not yet been matched with the rents on the west side of Jersey City. The rents on the west side of Jersey City just haven't matured yet to the point where you can afford to do that kind of construction, which is more representative of downtown and now General Square. That rent gap is significant. An apartment in this tower above these restaurants and performing arts center will probably be at least $1,000 a month, probably even more than that, less than that same apartment is elsewhere. Elsewhere, you use that delta to pay for the affordable housing. Affordable housing is paid for by the market rate housing. What's happening on the west side is that this project, along with the others, when they're finished, will help raise the rents so that Bayfront, you can have 30%. You can't do that now at Bayfront. It's just not feasible. The numbers don't work. So if we finish University Place, which we will do, everything will be built in another 3 years. Those units at University Place, that performing arts center, that ShopRite, the restaurants and shops in the other buildings, that will rise the rent level in that entire, in two wards, you know, Mira's ward and Denise's ward. Those rents will now be high enough so that you will be successful at Bayfront. Think about University Place as the stepping stone to Bayfront. We could have, when both of these things are built, 4,000 or 5,000 housing units there with a lot of affordable housing. But we can only do it by getting the market rate rents up. And they're just not there yet on the west side. They're simply just not there. So these 24 units are sacrificial. The information that we provided NW Financial will show that even that's a stretch. But it won't be so in 3 to 5 years. Once it's all complete and the rents will rise. We don't have a pilot on this project. So we are simply asking to allow apartments to be on a site that was formerly going to be tax exempt for a school. And the payoff is, $1.7 million in year one, $52 million present value over 50 years, about $80 million gross value over 50 years. Plus this Joffrey Ballet School, which, by the way, we seem to gloss over that. To have this world-class ballet school here is a big deal. I mean, it's going to, culturally, it puts Jersey City on the map.
So this is, current time, because of rent in the west side of that area, it's not feasible to have more than 7% affordable housing.
In this project, high-rise.
Yes.
You could do better in the low-rise projects.
Okay, so then, the first year, you provide a 7% affordable housing. Then over the next 5 years, achieve the goal maybe 10% when the rent rises.
As the rents escalate?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then
we might be able to look at a model that would.
That's what I'm saying. So the current time is 7%. 24 units is not feasible, and that's the maximum. Then, fine, because of the market rent is still not that high enough to support that. Then, okay, First year, we do that year 24, after you get CO
Yeah.
rent, and over the 5 years, you achieve the goal to maybe 15%. I'm not asking 20,
Yeah.
at least a 15%.
I will work with the council people, their council, who is very bright, and the developer, and I'll see what we can come up
Not
with.
that dumb.
What's that?
How long is the affordable unit for?
What's that, I assume
I thought it was,
the length of your affordability is 30 years, or how long?
that's what I thought. It hasn't been,
Tanya, no, it hasn't been
It
decided?
hasn't been decided. And again, because
So
there's
you
no,
understand.
there's,
First year,
oftentimes it would be tied to
Over the
perhaps
5
pilot,
years.
right, the pilot would be the length of the
That's what I'm
affordability. There is no pilot, but we have talked about entering into an agreement on the other community benefits. So in particular, if it's a redevelopment agreement, that could also be a part of the redevelopment agreement, would be setting the timeframe.
let me work on that, Councilman.
Yes.
Let me work on that.
Great,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying, so we feel comfortable, and when the rent price go up, they're more to bring up the gentrification, so we have to build up the cushion to protect.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Councilman.
And I'm not saying that we shouldn't push for more affordable housing, we should. But this is the last building in this project, and before I got on council, I wasn't here for the conversation, so I don't know who may have pushed for what, but all I know is that we have 4 other buildings in this project with abatements, with 0 affordability and 0 community benefit that I know of. And now we have a project that's here, that's offering affordable, not asking for abatement, giving community benefits, has met with recreation, met with Jersey City Public Schools, providing community space, and I feel like we're going through the ringer. Not saying if we can get more, let's get more,
No,
but
he's saying as the rent,
what do we do
as the rent go
for
up,
those
he's saying we should
120 year worth
request.
of abatements that we already passed?
So
Like,
what
we
he's
keep
saying-
having this conversation about affordable housing, community benefits, but where were all of these conversations before? Like, we have to do a better job, and when we have an opportunity to get these benefits,
Yeah.
we have to get it,
Yeah,
especially for the southern end of the city, where
Yeah.
we're not seeing any development right now.
No, he wants that, he wants that, but he's saying as they go on, because what.
No, I
if
got
he's
what he's saying,
the
and I'm
rent
not
will
saying
go
that's a
up.
bad
So
thing.
you
If
should-
they can
you
do
should
it,
go
we
for
should.
more. And that's the whole thing, we should go for more.
I'll respond a little bit, which is
Right.
just that, I can say for myself, I passed the abatements and approved
Right.
them, and was
It was
very,
good.
very supportive of them
Very.
at the time. And so the thought process at that time was that there was no development in those areas, right?
Correct.
So the idea of you stimulate, and I'll go back to 2013, when we awarded the first one at Journal Square, and I remember saying very loudly at that time that if you're a developer and you're first into market, and you have the opportunity, and we provide those sort of incentives, but if you come later on with other projects, as the market improves and increases, just as the councilman pointed out, that those incentives should not be as generous as you move forward, because you have less risk going forward, right? So the market and the property values and everything else is escalating, and so we should reduce that sort of those sort of incentives or benefits as time goes on. Because there's less risk for that developer at that time, and more profit opportunities.
So my goal is very simple. We don't want to hurt any project, and on the other hand, we don't want to hurt our taxpayer, the resident, the people looking for housing. You know, so this time is a 7% reasonable fine, and the councilman Dennis say she's right, nothing wrong with that. But when we talk about increased zoning, even though they not get the tax abatement, we try to make sure that they provide a minimum 20% affordable housing. Doesn't matter is tax abatement or non-tax abatement. So we try to make sure that
What's that?
We try to make sure that 343 units is not small project, it's a big project. It's compared with the 23 or the 24
Okay,
to
we're moving on.
Right. So
Let's move on.
come up plan. The first years maybe, second over the 5 years, what kind of increase that affordable housing units there. Then
yeah, I am, first, yeah, I have got to work on it. First of all, I applaud the sentiment of getting as much affordable housing in that section of Jersey City as possible. I also applaud the dream of getting a lot of affordable housing at the Bayfront. Let me tell you how the dream works. get market rents higher, and you can have all the affordable housing you want at Bayfront. That's what University Place is trying to do.
Yes.
We're trying to be the launching pad to raise the tide, so to speak, so that we can have affordable housing. I'll work with the developer and we'll come up with something.
Yes, please, okay?
Okay, can I just ask a few things? I'll be very quick. Could I get information about, for the first several developments, just the occupancy rates and rents?
Sure.
Been generated to date?
Yeah, by the way, the first development, Rivet, is the only one occupied, and I think it's today about 80% occupied.
Okay. So if we can just get the rents across the board? How much
Yeah,
rents are exceeding?
NW has them.
Councilman, we need that to NW, but yes, we can definitely.
Great. And then obviously the financial analysis.
Yep, we gave NW has that.
So with regard to, there was the debate about the public benefits program and how that would be memorialized. What's the final conclusion there?
Well, so the amendment as it's written says an agreement. And we have had further discussions about whether that would be a redevelopment agreement or some kind of a direct agreement with the city. We'd be amenable to a redevelopment agreement if that's what the city wanted.
We have a draft MOU that we can hand over to either the redevelopment agency or to Corporation Council. And the memorandum is in good enough condition that it could be easily turned into an agreement.
Okay, and then with regard to they provide information about students, how many students are debt-free?
Yes, and Councilwoman asked for more information on the community benefits program related to music.
Yes.
I'll do some inquiry.
And then there was kind of an open question with regard to the number of years of affordability. How will that get resolved?
When we come up with this different idea, we'll layer that in. It was my understanding that it was 30, but I don't think it was ever written anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's not generally a hard and fast.
Yeah, so I don't know, but we'll lay it out in the same plan that we were talking about with Councilman Yun.
So I have a new idea.
Okay.
And I brought this up before a long time ago, actually, last year sometime. And I should have brought it up with the Journal Square 2060 and a bunch of other amendments to various redevelopment plans, but someone just triggered that for me in this conversation today. Because this is all upzoning, and there's no tax abatement or HUD financing, in terms of the restrictions on eligibility around this. And this is more for the law department and planning, because we always say that Jersey City, we can't just restrict it to Jersey City residents, because HUD financing and other folks say that it's discriminatory. But because this is through upzoning, essentially, are we restricted by that, or could we make this just Jersey City residents eligible, like, providing evidence of Jersey City residency prior to, and I say that to say,
it would,
with all due respect to folks from Brooklyn or wherever they're coming from, like, I'd like to see affordable housing stay within Jersey City.
Yeah, for no additional charge, I'll give you my expert opinion.
Sure.
It would preclude any kind of construction or long-term financing. You can't put handcuffs on, for example, Rivet, where we cut the ribbon, if you recall, about 15 months ago, is today 80% occupied. These are mostly new residents of Jersey City, not existing residents. So what we're doing is bringing new people into town. This 340 unit building will cost probably twice as much as Rivet. I mean, it's high rise and it's more units. It would not be financeable if you told that lender, we're only going to rent to people who already live here.
Well, for the 20, for
the affordable, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, just the affordable.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure that you can do that.
May
I still think that's going to be an issue.
Well, but there's no HUD involved here, that's my point.
We'll look into
If we can do it, but if we can do it,
And we know what the council's intent, and we should know for the future and other projects as well. So
Right.
there's certainly no problem with that research. Make sure-
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the team from NJCU? All
No, it's a good project.
Thank you for your
Lots of
time.
love, come with decent numbers, something we can accept.
Yeah.
And also, when you talk about the community variety service or whatever,
We thank them.
make sure Handy Mosque is a part of that.
I
Okay?
got it.
All right.
We'll talk in between. In the meantime, I have one question, Council President. I presume we will do all of this between the first reading and the second reading?
Yes, I mean, those.
All right, so,
Time to put all this together.
because, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just to let everyone know that's here, the next meeting, next caucus is the day after the Veterans Day, it's a Tuesday. And
We
because of
noticed that, yeah.
We're punting the meeting to Thursday.
Yep, it's already on my
Thank you
calendar.
for
Yeah.
saying that so I can do a PSA.
Okay.
All right, so,
Those
in,
dates are the same as a planning board date and a zoning board date, is that?
Hey,
Okay.
council is superior.
Got it.
you'll boot them out of the room. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we gotta keep moving on here. Folks, Barker Patel is on a timeline, so she's gotta go up front. There's nothing on this, is there something on this agenda?
What timeline?
The bike master plan's not on this agenda, is it? Okay. She is here to do a presentation on the bike master plan. No, I don't believe so. There's nothing on the agenda.
There aren't any items for voting.
Well, what is it?
What is it?
The bike master plan.
What is that?
There's no agenda item related to this. I've just been asked to come do a presentation on the plan that was completed recently.
This phone was, I took it by mistake.
Might be Tanya's or Brian's. Okay. Marlene, I have the Connect app open. Yeah. Thank you. There it is. Okay.
And then after Barker, it'll be Joe Bauman, James Fearon. And then we'll see from there.
Okay.
Reduce those bike lines on Bergen Avenue.
It would start from a place of zero affordability
John, it's stopping.
and to have more affordability.
Okay, sure.
That makes it hard to close.
Yeah, so we actually lay it on more. It's like, for example, a nonprofit getting space in there, that would save them $2,000 a year.
Okay, good evening, council members. I'm here to give a very brief presentation on the recently completed bicycle master plan. Like Council President mentioned, there is not an agenda item related to this, so it's just a presentation of the major deliverables. They're very large documents, so I have one hard copy of each of the two major deliverables, which I'll pass around. So this one is the actual bicycle master plan document, and then this one is the bikeway design guide, and in my presentation I'll go through what each of those is.
So we all get a copy of that?
I'll share the link. If you'd like hardbound copies, we can see if we could get those published. Yeah, they're just 200 pages each.
We can't look at it and get this
Yeah.
at the same time.
So just to provide a little bit of an introduction to why we did this master plan. As you all know, we have a circulation element in the Jersey City master plan, which talks about the vision and plan for the city as we grow and projects out to 2050 with goals for mobility. And within the circulation element, there is a goal for creating a citywide bicycle-friendly environment. The circulation element was developed in 2009. It's an award-winning element of a master plan in the state of New Jersey. And it was most recently amended in 2011. And then last week, the planning board voted on a re-examination of the circulation element based on the deliverables of this bike master plan. So related to mobility, there are multiple goals in the circulation element that talk about the city as it's going to develop in the next few decades, as more and more people, as we just heard, move into the city, and how mobility patterns are going to change. So because we have limited real estate on our streets, because we have a lot of historic neighborhoods with very narrow streets and narrow rights of way, naturally the way people move around in the city is going to change, because there's only so much capacity that the streets can handle. And as we deal with those issues and environmental issues like climate change and public health, with so many of our kids having heart problems and obesity and diabetes, it's really important to think of all of those things holistically. So we're looking now at more sustainable forms of transportation that are more space efficient, that are more cost effective, that are sustainable for the environment and healthy for residents to be using as we make specifically short trips in the city. So in the US, in a majority, in actually all urban environments, a majority of trips that are taken are short trips, which are defined as 3 miles or less. And so if we can convert those trips to sustainable modes, we can make, great progress towards our goals. So last year, we launched this, we launched this planning study to develop a bicycle master plan. It began in June of 2018 and concluded in August of 2019. And the purpose of this plan was basically to provide an update to the goal that's already in the circulation element, which is to create a more bicycle-friendly environment, but to give it some legs and to give it some real recommendations, policy recommendations, and update the goals and vision. So the study was done with the help of an external consultant, which is led by the firm Street Plans. They're internationally recognized for this work, and they helped us develop this plan, but was managed in-house. So the first document is the Bicycle Master Plan, and its contents include 1, just the vision and goals of the Bike Master Plan. 2, what bicycle master planning is and where Jersey City is currently in terms of crashes that happen that involve cyclists, what percentage of our residents currently use a bicycle, what the network looks like. Number 3 is the entire outreach process that was done throughout the year-long study. Then we go into specific ward-based analyses of what's happening in each ward, how many crashes took place, what the network looks like, how much connectivity there is, and then recommendations, which includes specific location-based drawings for certain streets in every ward. And then there are action plans to achieve equity in cycling, how we should be evaluating our work, education, encouragement, and enforcement, and then a priority plan for projects.
Hold on a minute. We cannot even read it. We cannot even see.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, business administrator, Brian,
The letters.
you installed the small, tiny monitors here. We cannot even.
Okay, so
I'll do my best to narrate everything that's on the screen, and we'll send this out to you. Hopefully, from now on, all of the text should be much larger than that.
Your priority goal should be to speak to the people in the neighborhoods where you, especially in Bergen Avenue.
Sure, I'll get to that.
Disaster.
I'll get to that in a minute. So there are a few priority goals of this bike master plan. The first one was the network. So this image up here was the existing bike network in terms of the lanes that existed before the summer of 2019. And as you can see, it's very fragmented. Most of the lanes do not connect to each other. If a person who's not a cyclist, if a person who's a driver was given this network, it would just be ludicrous because you would never be able to get anywhere that you want to go. So the proposed network provides connectivity to all of the major destinations between neighborhoods and complete and continuous connection north-south and east-west. And in order to do this, the network would be increased currently from 16% to 55% of the street grid. The second priority is mode share. So the only way to encourage or to create a bicycle-friendly environment is to accommodate a mode shift for those short trips that I mentioned, and to increase the number of people cycling. One of the most important priority goals is safety. So currently, when looking at traffic crashes, cyclists are 9 times more likely to be killed or severely injured in a traffic crash as are motor vehicles. Pedestrians are 10.75 times more likely. So clearly, they're a vulnerable population. Whenever there's a traffic crash, it is more likely that a cyclist or a pedestrian will die or have an incapacitating injury as a result of a traffic crash. And so safety is the number one goal, really, of the Bike Master Plan. And then equity. So what you see here is a map of the communities of concern. And by census tract, we looked at factors including low-income households, female heads of households, ethnic minority, people with disabilities, and combined all of those by census tract to understand what are the most vulnerable populations using those factors. And so the darker areas you see on the screen are the places in the city where we need to prioritize investments because those are the places that need it the most. Generally, people who are of lower income or people of color tend to also experience traffic crashes at greater rates, and so they are some of the most vulnerable of our population. So the vision of this plan was to create an environment where in the city people of all ages and all abilities would be able to travel safely around the city on a bicycle. And so this elevates the previous goal because the previous goal was just create a bicycle-friendly environment in the city. Generally, with goals like that, you can design facilities, but they're designed with the average user in mind, and the average user tends to be male, young, able-bodied, and it doesn't incorporate people on the fringes or on the extreme, which is who we want riding and who we want feeling safe on our streets, not just the people who would be riding recreationally anyway. And so we've updated our goal and our vision to this statement. And as we already talked about, as development continues to increase and more people are moving into the city and the streets are reaching their capacity or are beyond capacity, we need to look at more efficient modes of transportation. So the graphic I had at the very beginning of the presentation showed how cycling and transit and walking are some of the most space-efficient modes of transportation. And as an urban environment, we need to invest in those. And while we were doing this study, we looked at traffic counts that were done on a number of corridors throughout the city, either by New Jersey DOT or locally, the traffic counts that we've done. And we actually found that while population is continuing to increase over the years, that's not necessarily true for traffic volumes. Even though anecdotally it feels like there's traffic and there's congestion on our streets, when we looked at specifically the streets that are on our high injury network, we actually noticed a 6.2% decrease in the number of vehicles that were on those streets based on counts that were done. And so we see this as an opportunity to take some of the space and reallocate it for people who are legally allowed to be on the streets, which are cyclists, and to have dedicated space for them on the streets. So to provide a summary of all of the outreach we did throughout this study, we started in June of 2018 by being present at the ward tour and providing a pop-up bike lane to give people an idea of what a protected bike lane would look like. We then did 6 handlebar surveys, 1 in each ward, where we went out with the community and in some cases with the council people and rode the streets with residents and with the project team to talk about how the streets felt, whether we felt safe, whether the bike lanes connected to each other, where there was opportunity. Then there was a technical advisory committee that guided the whole process. Then we had 3 focus group meetings where we combined wards. So there was a joint group, wards A and F focus group. There was a joint wards B and C focus group. There was a specific focus group for Ward D and for Ward E. And this was, again, where we invited council people, neighborhood groups and block associations that are established that we know of, and really anyone in the public. And the reason for doing this additional outreach was to say, we've done these 3 traditional public meetings, we've done these handlebar surveys, is there anything else that we've missed that we haven't taken a look at that you want us to know? We then did a demonstration project where we did a pop-up bike lane over a long weekend on Bergen Avenue. We participated in a light-up ride, and our final public meeting was one where we had a 20-foot by 30-foot large map that we displayed on the floor in Dickinson High School and asked people to kind of stand on it and get a better feeling of what the network looked like, and give us feedback on whether or not they thought it made sense, whether we missed any areas. And so this has been the most robust outreach that we did for any transportation planning study to date, just in terms of the different levels of engagement that we offered to people. And a summary, I'm sorry?
Are those unique interactions, 15,605?
Yes.
Unique individual interactions?
I think so. I can confirm that for you.
Good.
Yeah.
Do you have a breakdown by wards or demographics or anything like that?
Sure, we can provide that.
Barbara,
Yeah.
we had all these meetings. How come when I had the meeting 2 weeks ago with over 150 people show up, nobody knew anything about this and was shocked when the lanes were put on Bergen Avenue?
Sure.
Without any respect for the people living in that community. I'm not picking on you, Barbara.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll let my director address that later. So a summary of the things we heard at those meetings is that the interaction of bikes and buses at certain parts of the street are challenging, that higher quality bicycle parking is needed, that pavement condition is really bad in some parts of the city and needs to be addressed, that there's virtually no wayfinding signage for cyclists, that better connections are needed to parks, and that the whole network lacks intersection treatments to make through movements safe and organized. So the following few slides are kind of what we heard from the public and what we did in the plan to address it. So what we heard from the public is that Jersey City needs a dense and connected bikeway network. What we did to address that is that we provided what we call a low stress network, which is 74% of the proposed network. This is basically somewhere where you would feel safe having your 12-year-old child ride a bike by themselves, because the facility is designed so safely. Intersections are dealt with so much care and are designed with those, not the average user, but the people on the extremes in mind, to create this low-stress network. We heard that the plan must include tangible goals that hold our elected officials and city staff accountable to implementing our vision. And our way of addressing this is to put forward a recommendation that biannually... Our way of addressing this was that biennially we would produce a Jersey City cycling trends report, where we would basically provide updates on what we've done so far, how the mode share has shifted, whether more people are cycling. We would provide counts on the facilities we have installed, so we could basically make the case that people are using the facilities, or if they aren't, then they aren't, and we need to make adjustments. We heard safety has to be a major focus of the plan, and so we've set forward a goal consistent with Vision Zero that of eliminating cycling fatalities and severe injuries by the year 2026. We heard most of us ride frequently to neighboring cities, but very few, if any, bike connections exist. So we have provided or proposed bicycle connections into Hoboken, into Bayonne, into Newark through the East Coast Greenway alignment. And here's an example of what that would look like. I'll show more of these location drawings sort of larger later on. We heard building out this network will impact on-street parking, and so we've put forward a design guide where people requiring disabled parking or access, commercial loading zones, etc., would not be significantly impacted, and we would look at those areas specifically when we put forward designs. People said I'd bike more frequently if I was guaranteed a safe place to park, and so we put forward a specific section in the bike master plan just for bicycle parking, recommendations to update the bicycle parking ordinance that we have in our code, and to also update requirements for new developments as they provide bicycle parking both indoor and outdoor. Better bike lanes are great, but I'm worried about street improvements pricing out people of our neighborhood. How will this plan benefit everyone? And our way of dealing with this is an equity action plan, again, by prioritizing investments and making streets safer overall, whether or not they have a dedicated bike facility, just traffic calming on all streets, and prioritizing those places that are communities of concern. People driving are not the only ones who need education about safety and courtesy. I'm most often a pedestrian who feels threatened by people biking on sidewalks or riding the wrong way in bike lanes. We have an education action plan, and also through Vision Zero, a multimedia campaign that we're working on currently to publish videos and pamphlets and educational materials for all riders and what safe behavior means for everyone on the street. Maintenance is a large concern. Poor pavement and deteriorating lane markings reduce the usability and safety of our streets. So we have a specific maintenance plan related to this, which basically says leverage the work that's already happening on our streets, like resurfacing and repaving, and use that as an opportunity to upgrade streets where we can. Planning is one thing, but implementing is quite another. How will this effort create change in the near term? And so our way of dealing with this is really to say that we're going to prioritize streets on the high injury network. Those are the streets that are the most dangerous in Jersey City. 14% of our streets contribute to close to 60% of crashes. And so we're using that as a way to deal with this. So again, here is the existing plan. You can see not a lot of connectivity. Here's the proposed plan. I know it's kind of hard to see. We'll provide a larger map so you could see this, but just to summarize, the types of bikeways that we're putting forward, there are 4 of them. One is protected bike lanes. These are the safest facility that have been proven to be the safest for people of all ages, all abilities. Second is neighborhood greenways. These are places where you may have a street that's really narrow, that doesn't have the space for a protected bike lane because you want to preserve parking on both sides and there's just no right-of-way width. And on that street, it's basically ways that we can traffic calm that street by adding pinch points, by adding green infrastructure, by adding what we call visual friction on the street so that it's intensely traffic calmed so that you would feel safe riding your bike on that street even without a protected dedicated facility. The third is conventional bike lanes, which are a majority of what we have in the city. They're not protected. They're on the outside of the parking lane. We recognize that in some places that's all we can do on our streets. It's a little bit difficult because they're not very safe. People often double park in them. There are other issues related to them, but they still provide the connectivity. And then the last one is shared use paths. These are like the Hudson River Waterfront Walkway, the Morris Canal Greenway, anywhere where pedestrians and cyclists are sharing the path. So currently we have 36 miles well, before the summer of this year, we had 36 miles of unprotected bike lanes in Jersey City. The plan is proposing 121 miles of a combination of those 4 typologies.
I think this should be
And here's just another breakdown showing the distribution. So this graphic illustrates the pedestrian shed versus the bike shed. Basically, there's this idea that if you're a pedestrian, you can cover a quarter-mile shed, which is within a 5-minute walk. If you're on a bike, you can cover a much greater distance within those 5 minutes just because of the speed at which you can travel. And so the point of having this graphic is to say that if you equip people with good infrastructure, they can really access so many more parts of the city on a bike that they previously were not able to. Okay. So in addition to these sort of more broad policies and recommendations, the master plan includes sections for each of the wards of the city, and here's just an example of what that looks like. So for Ward A, we have a narrative describing what the development is like, what streets generally look like. Then we have a network profile that says basically how many miles of bike lanes exist in that ward, over the total miles that existed, how many crashes have happened within this time period. So between 2008 and 2017, 62 crashes have happened in Ward A that resulted in 9 fatalities. So 9 people lost their lives in Ward A as a result of a traffic crash. 28 people experienced an incapacitating injury in Ward A. And then these are just the segments that exist in Ward A. You can see a lot of east to west horizontal bike lanes, but virtually no connectivity, right? So you have segments of streets where you can bike, but then you're kind of left with nowhere to go, or you feel really unsafe. No one would want to bike in this environment, or really extremely experienced people would want to. And then we have the proposed section, which says so from the 10 miles that existed, we're now proposing increasing that to 32 miles, some portion of which would be protected, and this is what the new network would look like. So in Ward A, there's not a lot of opportunity for east-west streets that have protected lanes because they're pretty narrow. So you see not a lot of green on the east-west, but quite a bit of green on the north-south to provide people a protected way of traveling between neighborhoods and having a safe, dedicated facility to do that. And then there are location-based drawings that basically say, here's what the street looks like now, and here's what we would propose. And there are 25 location-based drawings throughout the city that look like that, as an example. And these are all proposed. So this is, whenever we get to that point of installing these in that specific community. So here's Ocean Avenue. One traveling in each direction, parking on both sides of the street, and then the proposal would be a northbound only facility, a bike lane on the easterly side of the street, and then how you would treat a bus stop. You'd basically have actually an upgraded bus stop facility where the bus would stop in the travel lane and you'd be able to board. Here's an example of Sip Avenue between Hawthorne and Whitman. And here there's only space enough for a two-way facility on one side of the street, so that's what we're showing. So we basically have that for each of the wards. I won't spend too much time on this for now. And then, like I mentioned, there's this bicycle parking plan. It identifies places that are in need of parking, where there's a lot of demand for bike parking. Okay, so I will skip ahead now to the bike design guide. So the way this document differs from the bike master plan, I'll be done in 5 minutes. Okay. So the first document was more about policies and recommendations and focusing specifically on streets. This is a bike design guide which sets forward design standards. So it basically upgrades the design standards we had already, and this is actually a really good tool for us because it helps us deal with sort of the quirks of our network that we haven't been able to deal with very efficiently yet. Things like T-intersections, offset intersections, busy through streets, and then also quiet neighborhood streets, the lack of parking, the inconsistency between. Oh man, I guess I might be done earlier than I thought.
Well, we'll send it out.
Yeah, we'll send it out.
So before you go,
let me just wrap up with the design guide. So the design guide gives us basically how we should be designing our streets, lane widths, how we should treat intersections where people are the most vulnerable. And both documents have been presented to the planning board. They were presented on October 15th. The planning board voted on it. There were 7 members present. Of the 9, all 7 voted in favor of this document. So the circulation element will now be amended to include recommendations from the bike master plan.
Okay, let me just add to your presentation. Thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
First is let's ride into the city. I see that all the pictures, samples, what they go. Actually, one is a Jersey City, most is like other out of Jersey, like other state. other state, the street is a totally different Jersey City.
I just
So-
want to clarify, the pictures from other places are exclusively in the bike design guide because we're using best practices from other cities. That document, the bike master plan, has a lot of pictures from Jersey City itself
Another one.
to focus on
This one,
us.
I want you to all the council people aware that this is all the plan for each district, each ward. Before planning board vote for this one, I'd like to have every council person have a copy of this one. I'm gonna go back to my word, and I'm gonna call the meeting, and I'm gonna make a presentation to how their plans set up. If we try to Summit Avenue to limit it to one street of parking, and Central Avenue, and the Bauer Street, forget it about it.
Sure,
We're never
so
gonna go move on.
I just want to clarify.
So.
The
before
master
planning
plan,
board- yeah.
the master plan, so we had a final public meeting for the master plan where we showed all of these features, the ward-based action plans, all of that stuff to the public in April of this year. And the final meeting was held at Dickinson High School. It was open to all of the public. We received 0 public comments during the 1-month-long comment period. And so we presented it, we made some adjustments, and we presented it to the planning board last week, and that's when the vote took place. And in response to the concern about Summit Avenue and streets similar to that, there would be an extensive public process for any street like that where there's going to be a significant
So this is what
change
it
to
is.
the street.
So Councilman, so we're not gonna, these are all basically ideas and suggestions.
Right, 30, 40 years
We're
out,
not- we're not
for the
saying
full
this is
network.
what's going to happen. We will have public meetings, the council people will be involved. This is just a general idea.
Okay, good.
Oh,
All right.
well,
Okay.
Brian, if that's so, then why wasn't PS number 11? Why wasn't St. Aidan's? Why wasn't Hudson
Councilman,
Catholic? Why
so
wasn't the
we talked
Catholic
about-
Church?
Yeah.
Why wasn't I, and why wasn't anybody in the neighborhoods notified of that disaster up on Bergen
We did a
Avenue?
ton of notification. We could talk about that offline. We're happy to do a public meeting, as we talked about.
We want the bike lines changed
So
on Bergen Avenue.
We'll say, yeah, sure, and
And this should be up to a vote of the people, because the whole Ward C and part of Ward D and these other wards are gonna be furious when you see what you've done to Bergen Avenue. Not you, Bakra. I don't know who was responsible for it.
Barca.
But it's a shame. And while I'm sitting here, I'm getting texts from
Barca.
people because they found out that this was going on.
So at least this one, let's try Jersey City. I like the copy of this.
Sure, I'll send that out to everyone.
Link to everyone, and they'll see if they can print out copies for
Yeah,
everyone.
that-
okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Barca.
Scary.
Sure.
Happy
Because
birthday.
like, Barca,
It was last week.
Barca, when you call the community meeting or public meeting, talk about the bike line, then most people not show up. But if you say that, we're gonna talk about the bike line, and the subtitle can be limited the parking space. I guarantee the room will fill.
That's true.
So please, when you talk about the bike line, don't just say bike line. And we already say that it can be limited, that one side street will be limited to all the parking. Then I'm telling you, you will see how the general public reaction. So
Yeah.
before anything, the way Brian say, you talk about our dream issues of 20, 30 years later, fine, we have one, because that's where consulting company make money. 20, 30 years later, I think that things change. So,
Right, but
they
the issues we're dealing with are happening now, so I just wanted,
So I need a copy.
mobility issues, environmental issues, all of that. But yeah, we'll
Okay.
send the copies.
Folks, you'll all get the information.
It's too late.
Councilman?
They've already made a disaster up there, and we want it changed. And the people
All right,
up there are
Okay,
furious.
Councilman.
We're gonna have a meeting about it. We'll take it.
Brian will take care of it.
So this is not coming to council?
So the master plan and all of its elements are solely the jurisdiction of the planning board, which is why I'm here today to give the presentation, to just tell you all what the contents are, what's in the master plan. But the planning board is sort of the last step for a re-examination. So the process we used was a re-examination to the master plan, whereby we basically amended certain goals and certain strategies that either already existed, or we added new language through the re-examination process, which is just the planning board's process.
So it never comes before the city council for a review?
Right, it's just like a
It's just
vision
plan, though.
document,
So if we were gonna change the
right?
structure of any streets, yes, of course.
Of
Or
course,
we needed a
yeah.
contractor to do some striping, yes, but this is
Okay.
just a plan.
Just a planning,
Yeah.
planning board.
Yeah, yeah.
But actually, you want to implement the plan in the street, Suppose they have the city
Absolutely.
council to
Yes.
approve that, okay?
Exactly,
Good.
exactly.
Has that plan been approved by the planning board at this point?
Yes.
It's a plan. Take a plan, approve any plan, please.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right?
Thanks.
So I know I said earlier that we'd bring up Mr. Baumann and Mr. Fearon. But before we do that, we have recreation employees here, so I just wanted to see if we could knock that one out. Okay? That's ordinance 3.6. And I introduced this ordinance. It's an ordinance repealing Ordinance 19-081 in its entirety. It's self-explanatory. I talked about this at the last council meeting. And just for the public record, so that everybody who's ever watching on television and is aware.
Council President, I don't have a copy of 3.6.
Well, it's in the electronically online available.
Can we have a copy of that then? Administrator, can I have a copy of 3.6?
Marlene, can you get him a copy of 3.6? Ordinance 3.6? Okay. So council members, it repeals Ordinance 19-081, which amended and supplemented Chapter 3, and essentially changed the Department of Recreation to the Department of Recreation and Youth Development, and reorganized the department in order to fulfill its new mission, as it was titled in the back in July. The City Council voted to enact that ordinance in July 17th. I don't need to kind of recount what's happened since then. September 25th, a memo was issued to recreation employees, informing everyone, notifying everyone that they needed to apply for listing a series of jobs within the new department structure of Recreation and Youth Development, and then notifying everyone, and I reread the letter, that they must apply for a job by October 11th. That date was then subsequently kind of pushed back at that time. Since then, it's pushed back from October 11th to October 18th. As I said at the council meeting, and we may disagree on this, but I think on the face of it, and while I don't have any specific information and would ask for some guidance from the law department, I think that this ordinance may be in violation of civil service, and talking to other folks about it who have more knowledge about civil service guidelines and rules than I do. But more importantly, I think I'm just concerned that, as I said when I sent this over to be repealed, that, and we talked about it on Thursday at the last council meeting, that I'm concerned that how I just feel it's truly cruel to ask people to apply for their jobs who have worked for the city for over a decade in many cases, who have civil service protections, and they're not seeing that afforded to them in any way, shape, or form, it appears to me, and that, and while I've had a conversation with the administration, I say respectfully, they informed me that this is in compliance with civil service. I've informed all of you that I did have a conversation myself, and the conversation with civil service was such that they informed me at that time, which is a little over a week ago, that while they had a communication and a conversation with the HR department, there has been no written communication with them about kind of this process to reorganize the Department of Recreation. And then when I explained what had transpired, and I let them know that this is all from my perspective. Obviously, I'm sure you're hearing from others and you'll have different perspectives on it, but these are the actions that have been taken to date with regard to the memos and so forth, and letting people know what the different jobs and positions they needed to apply for. They said they couldn't necessarily opine on the legality and compliance with regard to civil service. But they also did not say that it was in compliance with civil service, and they made it very pointedly to me in writing, by telephone, that until they receive something in writing, that they would They couldn't necessarily offer a formal opinion as to the legality of the compliance with civil service rules and guidelines around all of that. If there's other information out there, I'm not aware of that, and I'm certainly open to hearing about that. My final comment with regard to civil service and my conversation with them was, I said, if you haven't received anything in writing, if I were to write to you and ask for your intervention and your to investigate and provide us an opinion on this, would you do that? And they said that they would, and I've taken the liberty, just got it out today, and I wish I'd gotten out sooner. It's just been a little busy in trying to do that. And so I share with you this this communication that I sent to, if you can share that with him, with Kelly Glenn, the Director of Agency Services in the Civil Service Commission, and copied Sahid Alushi, who I had my original conversation with. And we need more copies?
We'll get it.
So I'm happy to discuss it and take questions, but and you know, when I if I may I read it into the record for the public, council members?
You know, over the last 6 years, we've had 5 directors in the Department of Recreation, and recently we had a meeting here right in the caucus room because they're cutting out programs for senior citizens. I think it's a joke. I think there's only one person that should be in charge of recreation. That's Joe Mackey, because he knows what the heck is going on.
I'm sorry. Let me interrupt.
I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame.
Rich, let me just say at the outset here. We welcome everybody to be here. The caucus is for the council to discuss and debate. It is a public meeting, but we ask that you not make any outbursts, and there's no public speaking permitted in the meeting. We respect all of you, but please adhere to those rules. Councilman Bogiano, what's your...
The one thing you don't want to do, like from the start, tick off the senior citizens of the city, because they're all over the city here, and they come out and vote. That's number one. Secondly, this whole thing of making people, if there's a problem and you have a problem with a person, management or the bosses say, all right, you're not doing your job, you correct it or get transfer them to someplace else. You don't make people that have been there for 20 years, 15 years, fill out an application for like reemployment. It's a joke. And I've been getting calls and calls and calls, and I'll tell you, between the bike lanes and this, it's like unbelievable. I mean, Michael and I come from an old part of the city where there's still people that live here that have been here for years and years, and they're tired of it.
As do many of us. So just
can I ask?
As do I as well.
Start at scale 1.
Yeah.
When they amend the name from the Department of Recreation to Department of Recreation and Youth Development to so and so, we thought that they would put another role, added to role the recreation. We never expect that we organized and put your people's the out of job or new hire, anything like that. Nobody gives a hint to us at the time. We just changed the name, you know. But why those things happen? Business admission. I mean, you never even told us that this is just we. Actually, I'm not doing it myself. But everybody believe that we just change name. You know what I'm saying? Not the titles, anything like that.
Right.
But why those things happen? So can you explain to us?
Yeah. So within that reorganization, there were some changes to the management and oversight of some of the functions going on in recreation. So there were some new positions created, some combination of some of the positions, and some sort of
Let's just be direct.
Yeah.
Is anybody losing their jobs here?
No one's losing a job.
Why are they filling out applications?
So,
what's the purpose of it?
Yeah,
Anyone being transferred to a different department, and what's the rules on the mass transfer for the civil service?
Yeah, so you know, Rolanda writes in here something about employees who are seemingly more knowledgeable about civil service have informed me this approach is in violation of the most basic tenets of civil service. I'm one of those employees. It's not in violation of any tenets of civil service. HR has said the same thing. So the only rule is that the city must provide 30 days notice for transfers that are lateral transfers. So we are taking this one step further. We are asking employees if they have an interest in the position that they're currently in, or if they have an interest in positions that are not the current position they have. So if they want to move to a different position in recreation, if they want to move to a different department, that's fine. That is above and beyond what we're required by civil service. Just a 30-day notice is all that's needed. So this is all happening in advance of that.
So
Yeah.
if I'm a baseball coach in the Department of Recreation.
Yeah.
And I say, I want to reapply as a baseball coach.
Yeah.
What are you guys going to tell me?
I think maybe the word apply is maybe not the right word. I think it's express interest. And that's fine. I mean, honestly, we can't say for sure right now, but it seems like most people are going to stay in the same place.
But based on civil service status too, it doesn't make a difference because it depends on the year that you're in civil service with a title. So
Yeah, and there's nothing that wouldn't get reviewed by civil service. There's no title changes that wouldn't go to civil service. I think part of the confusion is that civil service won't get notified about any changes until we make the request for the changes, and we haven't done that yet. We're asking employees at this point to express their interest in what they want. If they want to stay as a baseball coach, that's fine. If they want to move, that's fine too.
I want to be very clear. Let me just say,
And we did explain this.
Let you finish first. Okay?
Yeah.
So you finish first, okay? So we can hear. So go ahead.
Yeah. So communication issues aside on all this, we're trying to make sure that the employees have an opportunity to be heard in the transfers, if any. And most of them probably won't move, as I said before. And if they want to stay where they are, that's fine as well. There are some positions, there are a few positions maybe that in the shape of the reorganization have a slightly different function. Maybe they're absorbing multiple functions, or maybe their current role gets split into multiple, something like that. There's a few small instances there, but everything we're doing is more than the minimum of the requirements in civil service law.
So I just want to clarify on one point. So it said expressing interest and it's not apply, but the memo dated September 25th literally reads, to be considered for any role in the new Department of Recreation and Youth Development, you must, bold, underlined, apply for a job posting. And it goes on to reiterate that and reinforce that throughout the memo. It clearly does not make it sound like you can just express interest and if there's a spot for you. It says you must apply for a job. Yeah. And so it makes people feel that if you don't, then your future may not be secure in the organization.
So fine. So if you don't want to be in the department, then you don't apply and express your interest. I don't know what the confusion is there.
Yes, folks, we're gonna, Councilman Robinson.
So how many jobs are available and how many employees are there now?
I don't remember the exact number on both. It's about even. I can't remember the numbers.
About even?
Yeah, I think there are. It's like there's. I don't hold me to the numbers. I think it's 41 jobs and 40 or 41 employees, or something like that. It's somewhere in that range.
Councilperson Waterman.
The organization chart, that might clear up some of this. We need to know where the people are, and if you created a new department, we want to see where they go. That's what we want to see.
Well, we don't know where anyone's going because we are trying to work that out still.
I think, if I may, so that's fundamentally, I think, a flawed assumption, right? So to not know where people are going, if you have a civil service title, and you have civil service protection, you have a job, right? And you have a job within that department in which that civil service title currently resides. Unless you're eliminating that civil service title, then you're eliminating that job and that position.
Yeah.
And we should just be clear about that, as opposed to saying.
But we're giving people the opportunity to make changes if they want to. So we're not forcing people to stay in their same role. That's the point. We're not saying you must keep this place. You can if you want to. That is totally fine. But we're not assuming that either.
Can we make sure we get those numbers, jobs and employees?
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Because I mean, I was told about a mass transfer to civil service. If you're transferring more than a certain amount of people, then it's illegal under civil service. If you're transferring more than a certain amount of people from one department to the next department.
Well,
Or to any
I mean,
department.
that's not the plan at this point. We're not taking everyone and moving them to a different place.
Are you
That's not the
guys
plan.
cutting people's pay?
No one's gonna, there's a possibility that some people's salaries may increase based on the new position if they want one, moving forward to them. But no one's pay is gonna get cut, no one's losing a job. Everyone, as Council President said, everyone has civil service protection. All the permanent employees, there's no way we can remove them from employment at this point. There's no way we can do it legally.
And just for the record, is from when? You said you got to notify them
30 days from notice. So it's 30 days. So the notice has to be at least 30 days from the lateral transfer.
So then let me ask you this way, business administrator Brian. So when they so 19081 when they amend the name of the department, that time you guys intentionally to has a plan to the way you sent the notice. It was there. Was it you guys had a plan to? We didn't know that you guys had a plan. Like
Plan to what?
Plan to reorganize the whole department.
It was in you saw the different structure of the department before and after, and that was the plan. The idea to create this process where we're allowing current employees to provide feedback on what they want to do was something we came up with afterwards. I think in some of these meetings with some of the council, I can't remember what that came up with, but
Brian, feedback with what they want to do. Well, if they don't fill out the form, they're going to be transferred. You know, I mean, come on. This is utter chaos. What I look at the parking authority. I look at the crossing guards. It's got to stop. And I know who's to blame for 90% of it. And it's got to stop. You know, people have worked for this city for years, and they're being treated like crap. Put it very plainly and simply. You know.
I'm going to concur with the councilman on this and just say that, whether there's job security and the idea that your salary is going to be secured, to say all of that without the dignity and respect of your work and your years of service as an employee, I think we are doing a serious injustice to our employees here. And when we talk about being the most progressive city in the nation and exemplifying that and modeling that, this smacks in complete opposite to everything that we're saying there. When we suggest and we treat our own employees in this way. I would urge you to abort this process. As I said at the time when I talked about this at the council meeting, that I don't think this is humane. It's inhumane and cruel to folks. I would urge you to abort the process. And if there are things that we need to do to, everybody wants to see improvement to programs and services across the board, whether it's recreation, Department of Public Works, police, every department and division, we all want to keep seeing continuous improvement. At the same time, there's a better way to do it. Councilman Boggiano pointed that out already. You manage your employees and you manage for outcomes and for goals and outcomes around that stuff. And if we do that, as we are doing with these council salary adjustments as well as director salary adjustments, and we incentivize directors and others to be held accountable for ensuring that they get top performance out of their employees, we can achieve the same results, but we can do it with everybody being lifted up, with the morale and of all of our employees being inspired to do their job, as opposed to feeling that they're not valued and even worthless in many cases. And I just apologize to our city employees because this is not the way we should be treating people. Council members.
So if people don't apply, they're getting transferred. Or they're going to be right back in recreation, or you don't know yet.
So we're also going to have some additional meetings tomorrow. Lucinda and I are going to meet with some employees who have not expressed their interest or applied, just to confirm where people want to go and what they want to do. I mean, we're not trying to force anyone into a place that they don't want to go, but we want it to be fair for everybody. We don't want to have certain people follow a certain process and other people not follow that process.
Ryan, well, there was a certain director in there a few years back. Most of the people that I know, I worked right across the street at the police academy in Cable Point. All those people fled the Department of Public Works. because, and it's been one director after another director after another director, and it's gotta stop. You know, because you're hurting the morale, not you, but this city's hurting the morale, like I said, not only of the recreation, the crossing guards are up in arms, the parking authority people are up in arms, the police department's up in arms. It's gotta stop. You gotta start treating people and taking care of the people that work here.
Any other council members want to comment? I would urge you and ask you for your support. Go ahead.
Sure, so I mean, this is sort of discussed by some of the other colleagues, but I think for some of us, just getting clear information that's written is going to help us. And so from the administration's perspective, you know, I speak for myself, I'm not a civil service expert.
Yeah.
But when people say civil service rules may be violated, that's concerning. So I want to have an understanding. So it would be great if, you know, the administration puts together a sort of full briefing for the council that says, okay, these are your understanding of civil service rules, how they're being applied, how they operate, what protections are given to Councilman Rivera's points around people's jobs and pay. And then obviously we talked a little bit about it in August, but what's the overall vision? Where are you going with this? What are you trying to accomplish by doing this? I mean, I think I have a sense, you know, I was in one meeting around about it, but like the question is, we're all, I think, more in the dark around this. And when the people are genuinely afraid and communication clearly hasn't met the standard that we should expect from the city, then there's, you know, people are asking us to take action. So I think at a minimum, we need the administration to provide, you know, very clear information in a very short period of time to us as a council, so we can start making informed choices.
Sure, yeah, we get y'all, I thought that information already come through, but yeah, we can provide that. No problem.
I just want to be on the record.
Councilman Rivera?
I just want to be on the record that I don't want people losing their jobs.
No one's losing their jobs.
People having their pay cuts.
No one's losing.
You can't, you have to be real careful. I'm aware, you know.
Business administration?
Yes.
If we knew their first place to, when they amend the name, if those things are followed, well, probably I'm not supportive, you know, to amend the name, you know, because nobody gives any idea or hint that they're gonna have to reorganize the whole department, you know. So that's one thing. So number two, the way Councilman James Solomon said it, because we got a lack of the information. So what you do till that point, you get clear in the city council, don't transfer anybody's, you know what I'm saying, and just stay the way they are now. And till we clear all the issue, right? And the way that James said that, we want to know what is the best benefit for people of Jersey and the people work there and the recreation department, then to provide a better recreation citywide, you understand? So clear that what is the goals to achieve that by reorganization, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so when we did that original ordinance, all that information was provided, but we can resend it.
So till the point that don't transfer anybody, you know what I'm saying? Let him stay there till here, till we all council understand, fully understand that you know. Okay. All right, got it?
Okay. Just on the point of the purposes, it's not just the purposes of the new department, it's how does this process
The process.
connect into that?
Yeah, sure.
And what is this process? Because, you know, it's an administrative function, but the council's responsibility to supervise that.
Sure.
Correct.
So we want to make sure that they do right.
Sure.
I'm actually happy that I fought to keep the recreation name there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nick, you want to weigh in legally?
Ryan's assessment of the law of civil service is exactly correct. And certainly the old ordinance did not violate civil service. It was a proper exercise of organizing a city department, as is the new ordinance as well. Neither ordinance violates any kind of civil service protections for anybody in particular. And Brian's assessment of how the policy is being applied and the protections that he's describing are actually over and above what civil service requires.
So what's the number that triggers the mass transfer?
I'm not familiar with this mass transfer idea, but
They were told
in
they don't
the
fill out
civil
this
service,
form,
it's
they're gonna be transferred.
So
if you transfer a certain amount of people, it's considered a mass transfer. And that would have to go to civil service. And it's illegal under the state law of civil service.
yeah,
if you
I'm not
transfer
totally familiar with that. But
I've actually never heard that concept either of
Yeah.
a mass transfer. I'll certainly look into it. But as of right now, no one is being transferred. And certainly anybody with a civil service title who is transferred to another position, it would go through a civil service
right.
review.
And also the point to make here is if you have a civil service title that's specific to recreation, then there would have to be a title change process, so that's a whole thing as well. If you would be moved, but again, the plans are not to mass transfer everyone in recreation to somewhere else. The intention is to keep most employees where they are if they have interest in staying in that place.
But somehow the memos go out, that gives a wrong, the different impression, you know what I'm saying? I think that is, we have to be admitted.
Okay, sure.
So listen, I was forwarded an email that says, please keep us abreast of any changes as there is a, in quotation marks, mass transfer civil service process that must be completed as well for all recreation employees.
Can you forward that to me? I forward it to both of us?
This is a very old email, but I have it here.
You got it too.
So
okay.
Huh?
Yeah, it's from the previous director. I don't know if it's good.
We can look into it, but I'm not aware of this.
Oh, it is.
Somebody has, we don't have the.
I will forward this to you.
Yeah, forward it to me. That's fine. That's fine.
You guys forward it directly.
I didn't get it,
So,
forward to me, Ken.
before we close this, I'm just going to make one request of law, and that is, you suggested that this is in compliance with civil service, it goes above and beyond. So, I'm going to ask specifically that the process of informing people that they must apply for a job posting, even if the role is the one you are currently in, as it reads in the memo, if that request and that process for all employees in the department is in compliance with civil service guidelines.
I can tell you now it is. We can put a memo together. It's Title
Great.
4A.
I would like to see that.
The state code. I mean, it's Chapter 4.
We just
That's
want-
fine.
We
That's
need
fine.
something in writing. Everybody have
Yeah.
conversation, but we really have nothing in writing.
That's
And
fine.
at this point, we just need something in writing.
Yeah.
We
Sure.
do. All right, just want to make sure that everybody keeps their jobs.
Sure.
And if they don't want to apply, then they don't want to apply. They should be able to just keep the job.
Yeah.
And if you have a new title, you should post it and let them go through the process. So everybody will know. To me, that's simple. I don't know.
So at least it's
I don't know.
from
It's
the,
simple to me.
our business administrator, they have no mass transportation, transfer, anything else, gonna stay as it is, you know, so you can go tonight, have a good sleep, till this council fully understand, you know, a processing object and go to the change. Other than that, we go back to square one, okay?
To me,
And also,
you know what? I'm
dur-
saying, to me, it's like, they want to stay in their job. If they want to stay, then let them stay. If you
Yeah.
have new titles based on the new, it's not even division, but the new program that you created, then post those titles, and whoever want to apply, let them apply. It
Yeah.
seems like that's easier.
So in other words, this is what it is. We put in the another additional, the youth development. Maybe some people is interested. So look at it as a creative job opportunity or title opportunity, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
we've heard possibly some employees might be interested in roles in other departments as well.
That's
And
what I'm
that's
saying.
totally fine.
Yeah.
Right, that's their choice.
Yeah, and I will stress that, you know, this process is not done, that Director McLaughlin and I are going to meet with some employees starting tomorrow. I'll see some of you tomorrow. We are gonna talk through options and what people wanna do in a closed setting, not in a place like this, to make sure that people are getting what they want and everyone's satisfied. And again, no one is losing their jobs, no one's salary is getting cut, and we're trying to be way above the minimum, more than we're required to as per civil service law in this process.
So what are we doing for those without civil service protection that's working there?
The permanent employees, I believe, all have civil service status. That's what we're talking about here. There are seasonal employees that are not really a part of it. I guess they could technically apply for positions, but the permanent civil service status employees have no issues.
So end of day, as a business owner, I'm gonna say that the people work for recreation and the youth department current time, their job security and the salary security is there.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about it. And we're gonna make sure that,
Yep.
you know, that youth development to that division be part of that new job opportunity who work the recreation department, have a different field they interested, probably they'll be a part of that opportunity, not part of that they lost their job and they lose their job. You understand, right?
Yep.
So you tell us that under the council under the people, we take your word and fully provide.
We'll put together a memo that states the specific statutes that are the minimum and exactly the process and the intention.
All right.
Yes, absolutely.
Councilors, I just have two very specific questions. So if an employee has a civil service title currently that is specific to recreation, and that title doesn't exist in the new organization, outside of applying for a new title, right? What are their options if they choose not to apply for that title?
So there's a possibility that there's a different title that matches their current job description, or maybe a little different, that we can discuss with them. That's totally fine. Again, even if the title isn't listed in the new organizational chart, no one can be fired or terminated over this. So there's a job somewhere for these people, these employees.
So let me so if they apply for a job with a new title, and they've got 15 years of service, do they carry over 15 years of service into a new title, or when that job then gets posted because it's a new title, right? And you'd have to, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd have to post it at some point, and other people could apply for that position. And so are they then, do they have seniority in that case because there's somebody else out there, or are they left like fending for themselves against a person who's applying for the first time for that new position and new title, even though they held the title for 15 years under an old title?
We would have to go through specific examples there. It's a case-by-case kind of thing, but
Case-by-case thing.
Okay, Brian?
Councilman Robinson?
Just to touch on what the president just said, are these jobs being posted to everyone in the city and people outside the city, or the jobs that's posted strictly for the employees?
Right now, we're just looking at the current staff within the Department of Recreation.
That's what I'm saying. When you put the opportunity, you just say that only people can apply. Current recreation department employees. That's all.
No, but then if they end up in a new title that's not their current title, and they end up in a provisional title at some point, and then I believe civil service rules will require you to advertise that position as a provisional title, and then somebody else can apply for that position.
But qualification.
Have you now lost your seniority and your original title because you've been placed into some provisional title, and now you're left vulnerable, wondering whether or not you can continue? I don't know that that's the intention or the goal, but
to approve the title first.
It's correct. Right. And so no one is saying that they would lose their old title without getting a new title. So you wouldn't lose your seniority, you wouldn't lose your old title, you wouldn't lose any of your old status unless you go to the new title, and that's a.
Brian, how much commotion this whole stupid thing has caused? Why don't we just go back to the normal, do away with this whole thing? And also, and you could tell Lucinda, I want the seniors back under recreation, not in the health department, because they're losing a lot of their services.
Okay. Council members, anything else?
No.
Nothing else? I just urge you, it's first reading introduction, still pending response from civil service on this. As I said, I just sent this out. I'd urge you to introduce this legislation, to repeal, and as we continue to see how this all eventually unwinds. But I'd ask you not to take this option off the table.
What do I do with it?
It's a first read, right?
Yeah, correct.
And then you got your 15 days to work it out. Good luck.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you all, okay? If you're leaving, please leave quietly and we can...
Hey, when can we expect that, VA? When can we expect that breakdown that
I think, let me check with the team, maybe tomorrow or Wednesday morning at the latest. I think definitely before the council meeting.
Let me get started on this next element on that.
Bond council next too.
Who's the guy?
Oh, yeah. Joe, folks, we're gonna keep moving along. We have Joe Bauman here. Joe Bauman's known to all of us. He's here on Resolution 10.5. It's an ordinance.
10.5 is a resolution.
Sorry, it's resolution authorizing an agreement between the City of Jersey City, the Jersey City Redevelopment Agency,
gentlemen.
900 Garfield Avenue LLC, Hampshire Urban Renewal Redevelopment LLC, Garfield J.C. Partners, and PPG Industries regarding reimbursement for removed public infrastructure at Garfield Avenue.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was a joint effort between Joe Baum at the Redevelopment Authority as well as myself representing the City Law Department. All the entities that the Council President just described, it's the City, JCRA, PPG, as well as the redevelopment entities for the Garfield Avenue site, which is currently undergoing a chromium remediation. It has for some time. The purpose of this resolution is for you to approve the agreement that would allow the city to recoup $2.6 million in infrastructure that had been damaged or removed as a result of the chromium irradiation that had happened at the Garfield Avenue sites. What I realized when I looked at it this afternoon was that all the exhibits were included as part of your resolution uploaded, but the actual agreement was not. So I passed around copies for everybody. Actually, it says 10.5 in the upper right-hand corner. That's the actual reimbursement agreement. The other piece of the exhibits that wasn't included was actually just finalized this morning. It's the actual deed notices. The deed notices were approved by DEP, and actually DEP is really the driver for those deed notices to say what environmental protections and requirements will move forward with all of those sites over time immemorial. The point of all this, though, really is that PPG, as part of their chromium remediation, removed or damaged $2.6 million worth of city infrastructure. When I say city infrastructure, it includes both the city as well as the MUA. Now, because this agreement came by way of litigation of a third-party complaint that PPG filed back in 2015, the MUA was not a party to that. So one of the things that PPG asked as part of the agreement is that the city would take on the responsibility of making sure that the MUA was reimbursed for its portion of that $2.6 million, which is by our calculation is slightly less than $1 million. That agreement will come to you at a future council meeting. So basically, we're talking about $1.6 million that'll be coming back to the city so we can put it back into that site as it's being developed. Joe represents the Redevelopment Authority, and Hampshire Associates, they are the redevelopment entity for that property. This has been going on, this agreement has been negotiated over a period of years. For the entire time I've been with the city. Joe's got the historical knowledge, so I'll make sure he was here to make sure we answer any of your questions regarding any context for what we're talking about here.
Okay.
But the bottom line is it's $2.6 million back to the city that we're entitled to.
But they damaged $2.6 million, but we give the JCMA $990 million, so we claim more than what we're supposed to be.
And,
what is it?
And if you actually want to see the breakdown of all the different infrastructure, it's in exhibit, I believe, F or G of the packet, and it goes, and actually the $2.6 million includes a 10% contingency.
Oh.
So it's not just, hey, this is the number, maybe it's going to cost more in the future than we're expecting. It includes that 10% contingency, and actually goes a little bit above that.
So the only thing I would also, two things I would add. One, it also sets forth the values. If they remove stuff in the future, they're not done with the work. So for each linear foot of pipe that gets pulled, there'll be more checks to come to the city if they don't replace it. The second thing, the expectation is much of this infrastructure will have to be that's been removed will be built by the redevelopers, not the city. So this is expected to be a net benefit to the city because we're getting paid for the infrastructure that got removed, but we're going to put it on the responsibility of the redeveloper to build the new infrastructure. For example, you pull out a sidewalk, the redevelopers are going to build the new sidewalk, not the city or the. So, but we didn't want them to walk away without getting, paying for the stuff that they're pulling out, even if someone else is going to pay to put it back in.
It's a good job.
Thanks. It's like this is a good news resolution, I think.
So it's a very smart. Okay. And they didn't ask any depreciation of all our infrastructure.
Well,
they pay us a replacement cost.
And
as a current price.
Yeah, because we're gonna replace it with. So you'll see there's a schedule, and the engineers went out and counted every linear foot of sidewalk and every pole that got taken down.
So let me ask you this: if we change anyway, we only reimburse just less than $1 million. if in the future, when they do that, their infrastructure, if they find on hidden costs, then what happens? We have to give them more or just?
No. Well, we don't have an agreement with the MUA yet, so that's yet to be figured out. But presumably, there's a lot of infrastructure that's going to get done over there. I think we're going to consider a way to make all the future developers pay for all of it and chip in some. That effort's on, Tanya's not here, but that effort's underway. So that infrastructure has to get redone throughout the entire area, and we're going to come up with a comprehensive project to make all the developers pay for it, including some of the MUAs.
So $99,000 enough to cover the cost of the...
That was actually going off the exhibit. When you count up what would belong to the city, what belongs to the MUA, that's how we calculated that number. We're planning on, it's going to be at least close to that number. Okay. But like we said, there's also the 10% fudge factor that went into the final number. So it might be slightly higher, calculating the 10% from the MUA's portion as well.
Yeah. Usually they put your contingency at 20%. When you say 10%, I'm feeling uncomfortable, but still $2.6 million.
Yeah.
I settled with them.
It's 2.6 that someone else is going to pay to replace.
Yeah. Okay. Good job.
Thank you. Council member, I'm sorry that for whatever reason the agreement didn't upload along with all the exhibits. There are copies for you. I'll work with Brian and the clerk to make sure it gets uploaded how it's supposed to. Feel free to contact me with any questions. The deed notices, like I mentioned, the final form came in today. I can circulate those with Marlene in case anybody has any questions with those. But those are really driven by DEP. So
I think you do a good job.
Thank you.
The question is, correct me if I'm missing
Yeah.
something here. So the private redeveloper is going to be responsible for replacing the infrastructure?
So on a block by block, parcel by parcel, when we negotiate redevelopment agreements, we're going to require them to do all the on-site infrastructure. So they'll have to put the curbing in, they'll put the sidewalk in.
And what was the situation before this agreement? Who was responsible for doing it?
We would have done that as well. So this.
His job was PPG stuff?
Well, no, PPG, what happened was PPG sued us, and they said, you got to give us our deed notice. The city in 2015 countersued and said, well, you got to pay us for the infrastructure you're pulling out. This is a settlement of that lawsuit. And so the city took an aggressive, you can't pull stuff out and not give us the money, so give us the money. We told PPG, the PPG wanted us to dedicate that money to new infrastructure, and we said, we'll decide how to spend our money, the city that is. If we can get redevelopers to pay for it, which we typically do, we're going to do that, and then the city will keep the money.
And then for the value, with the numbers?
So we engaged engineers, they engaged in engineers, they went out and estimated the value, and they walked the site, they counted the linear feet to get to this number. That chart was the subject of months, maybe even a year of negotiation, and so it was our engineer and their engineer.
Any other questions?
No.
Thanks, everybody. Joe, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All right, we have James Fair on here. James. James has 10.18. This is a resolution authorizing the circulation of a preliminary official statement and final official statement in connection with the sale of the city's Special Emergency Notes, Series 2019E, Special Emergency Notes, Series 2019F, Bond Anticipation Notes, Series 2019G, and Bond Anticipation Notes, Series 2019H, and approving a continuing disclosure certificate with respect to said notes of the city and authorizing and/or ratifying other actions in connection therewith.
Good evening.
The floor is yours, Mr. Farrell.
Thank you very much. This is similar to the resolution you might recall we discussed back in May, the last time the city was issuing its short-term debt obligations. In December of this year, actually, let me start. In December of last year, the city issued $51.2 million worth of short-term obligations. They were, as just announced, 4 separate series of debt obligations. 2 of them were special emergency notes, and 2 of them were bond anticipation notes. They are coming due in the first week of December, and the administration's plan is to roll over these notes with a $7 million reduction. That reduction, also sometimes known as a pay down, is a mandatory payment toward the principal amount of the debt that is required by the statutes. The upcoming financing would therefore be about $44.2 million. Roughly 15.2 million of that constitutes special emergency notes. Special emergency notes in this instance had been previously authorized by ordinances for the payment of severance liabilities and for the cost of a real estate revaluation in the city. Those special emergency notes by statute have to be retired in 1/5 annual amounts so that they are fully paid off over the course of 5 years. So most of the pay downs that I just mentioned were the 1/5 pay downs from the original principal amount of those special emergency notes. Bond anticipation notes, on the other hand, typically do not require sizable pay downs. They can be paid down, well, the pay downs normally kick in after you cross the 3rd anniversary date of original issuance. And there is a $52,000 pay down in this instance because one of the ordinances under which the bond anticipation notes were issued is now crossing that 3rd anniversary date. The purposes for the bond anticipation notes, I should mention, under the Series G, it is for various capital improvements under multi-purpose bond ordinances of the city that were previously adopted. Part of it included the infrastructure improvements at the West Campus project for New Jersey City University. I know you spent a lot of time on that project this evening. The Series H notes were first borrowed last December. And they represented the first of 2 borrowings the city made in furtherance of the Bayfront redevelopment project. This was a $15 million borrowing. Yes, sir.
Sorry, just the NJCU, that's the infrastructure bonds?
The Series G, yes, there was a bond ordinance that the city had adopted back in 2016 for $16 million of infrastructure, and we are borrowing it as they reach critical mass on their vertical construction. So there's, I believe, $8 million of that 16 million has been borrowed already. So within that roughly $14 million worth of notes is roughly $8 million associated with the New Jersey City.
Close that door,
Do me a
please.
favor.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Of the 14 million roughly of the Series G notes, about 8 million of that represents the infrastructure financing that we've already borrowed. Another 8 that we have not yet borrowed because the developments have not reached that critical point yet where we are obligated to do so. As I said, that's 8 million. The other 6 million would be just various capital improvements. I don't have them.
Can you say it loud?
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep thinking I'm talking into a microphone.
No.
I apologize, sir.
Can you study audible again? Because I cannot hear at all. I mean, you just mumbling, you know.
I apologize. I do not mean any disrespect by that. I will speak loud.
Richard, would you close the door?
Close it by itself.
Okay, let's keep this going.
Okay. All right. So the last part of what I was saying was that there are 4 series of notes. 2 of them were special emergency notes, and I started to describe that they were largely for severance liabilities and revaluation, and they need to be paid down by 1/5 every year. The bond anticipation notes are split into 2 separate series, the first of which, Series G, represents both infrastructure improvements for New Jersey City University, that's roughly 8 million of that roughly 14 million, and about $6 million for other miscellaneous capital improvements of the city, and I just don't have that list with me. The final series, the Series H notes, is $15 million that was borrowed for the Bayfront project. Now, the Bayfront project, you might recall, the city has passed a bond ordinance last year for $170 million to finance the acquisition of the property, the demolition of the buildings that were on the property, and environmental remediation, I suppose, and infrastructure improvements. The game plan, as I understand it, as negotiated between the city and the redevelopment agency, is that the redevelopment agency is going to be developing that parcel, and as they progress through the demolition and remediation, they will be marketing off parts of the property on a project-by-project basis, and that will generate money that will be used by the city to retire these notes. Mm-hmm. So there's a contemplation that this particular borrowing, the 15 million, would not go to long-term bonds. It would stay in short-term.
Yeah, we're actually, we've done the RFP for the first parcels of Bayfront. I think some of you are aware of this. It's currently in the RFP process, so we're not ready to talk about it, but So far, what we've seen, it's favorable, and we're actually very confident that we're going to be able to repay the debt and more from what we issued in those bonds, much more.
So that is the background of what was issued last year at, as I said, $51.2 million, and what we are proposing to roll over this year at a lower amount of roughly $44.2 million. The difference being the $7 million of required paydowns on the special emergency notes. And so the timing is that the existing note issue matures on December 5th, and the city is planning to market the refunding notes between the week of November 11th and the week of November 18th, roughly. The idea is to try to get a sale done before Thanksgiving, because people take half weeks, and the markets aren't paying as much attention during Thanksgiving week. And the resolution before you, as the resolution back in May did, does two basic things. One, it authorizes the use of an offering document called a preliminary official statement that describes the city, describes the note issuances, and describes the city's finances, basically. And the second thing that is being authorized is the execution of a continuing disclosure certificate. And you might recall, I think I described this back in May, that there is a rule by the Securities and Exchange Commission that whenever you access the capital markets, an issuer needs to commit itself to make certain public notices to the information repository in order to allow investors to know what's going on. In the case of short-term debt, these notices basically are limited to any of 16 listed events. And they are things as important as bankruptcy and as nebulous as incurrence of material financial obligations. We have discussed these undertakings with the city's finance department back in June when we last discussed this, and it's a standard requirement for bond issuers these days. So the bottom line is the resolution is seeking your approval for those two actions: the approval of the offering document, the approval of the undertaking to provide continuing disclosure in connection with the proposed December 5th note refinancing. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the document or about any other aspects of financing.
Council members, questions of Mr. Fearon?
Can I?
Councilman Yun.
So we're going to issue 4. 2 is 2019 E and the 2019 F is a special emergency note, the both.
Correct.
Okay, now, series 2019 E, actually, originally we issued 2015.
You may be correct. There are, as I said, for each special emergency ordinance,
yes,
when you first borrow it, you have to retire that amount that you first borrowed over 5 years.
That's what I'm saying now.
And it may be that if you go back in the history of these note issuances, in 2013, maybe you had a 2012 ordinance and a 2013 ordinance.
Yeah.
Then 2014 came around, you passed another special emergency ordinance, and you did a first borrowing of that at the same time that you did a rollover of other ones.
So 2015,
yes,
we actually, this council authorized $19 million. And now we we expect to pay in 5 years, so which is 15 and 20 next year, and it's $13 million. So if we issue note $13 million again, next year we gotta pay $13 million pay off, because it's an emergency note, short-term note. In 5 years we gotta pay off.
It's correct that it has to be done in 5 years, but what you need to see visually perhaps is the fact that for one ordinance, that 5-year period began in 2012. For another ordinance, it began in 2013. For another ordinance, it began in 2014. And each one of those ordinances has its own 1/5 calculation.
So keep moved it there another year.
But for any given first-time borrowing, it has to be completely paid off in 5 years.
Okay.
And that will be the case. I can compute and get back to you the amount of the 13.2 that will have to be retired next year.
Yeah.
But unless you borrow new money, which is possible, sometimes you pass another special emergency ordinance, unless you add new money to it, this 13.2 will go down next year. I don't know how much.
So can you tell us that in 2015 we issued $90 million for emergency note? What was that?
In 2015,
Yeah, 2015 we issued bond, $90 million emergency note. What was we gonna spend for this $90 million? Do you remember that?
I do not remember, but I can get you an
give us
answer.
that?
Sir,
And also-
if it was a bond issue, let me say this, if it was a bond issue as opposed to a bond anticipation note, it would have likely been a situation where you issued notes, you rolled over the notes several times, and then they reached a point where the finance department decided it was appropriate to go long-term.
Yes, but this was in 2015, there's an original date for the issue, so probably, can you find out what was that?
Yes.
And also 2019 F.
Yes.
Also, the special emergency note was, original was $3 million, so now $2 million we're going to, so would you let us know?
Last year, actually, I could give you an answer on that one because it was simple with one ordinance.
What was it?
That was, I believe, a $5 million borrowing that would have happened 3 years ago. And last year, it was down to $3 million, and this year, it's going to go down to $2 million.
What was it? What was the reason we issued?
Revaluation.
I'm sorry?
A property revaluation.
reval.
Yes. Yes. I went through this very fast at the beginning, and I apologize.
No.
E was for severance liabilities, and it was under several different ordinances that were passed in several different years. F was for a property revaluation, and that's the reason that they were separated into two different series, because one of them was eligible for tax exemption and one was not.
So we issued $5 million for the reval.
Yes.
And we pay for $3 million, and now we're going to issue $2 more million.
You are going to retire $1 million and refund $2 million.
$2 million, okay, good. So now another one is that, okay.
Yes.
You say E was for what?
E was for severance liabilities, payments to employees who are either being laid off or retiring.
And also, the 2019 Z, okay, so we issued at 2013 $40 million for the NJCU. I thought that this one supposed they pay us.
New Jersey
redevelopment bond. So
right. New Jersey City University. The deal, as I understand it,
yes,
you
but
can
they
correct
supposed
me.
to pay back.
The deal was that the city agreed with NJCU to finance up to $16 million worth of public infrastructure. The condition to the city's issuance of that debt, the New Jersey City University had to advance the money to make it happen.
Right.
And then the condition to the city's issuance of the debt, and as I said, we've only issued about 8 of that 16 so far, because it's a component of the 14, it's not all of the 14. A condition of that issuance was that the vertical projects that are being developed would have gotten shovels in the ground, permits pulled, everything ready to go, and it's going to be built. And that gave the city the assurance that because it's going to be built, that the payment in lieu of taxes associated with that building are going to come online. And the understanding was that the pilot payments were going to more than compensate the city for the outlay it would be making on the debt service. It was a linkage that you would not borrow the money for the infrastructure. The infrastructure would be fronted by NJCU. You would not actually borrow the money until these thresholds toward development have been met. And they have only been met on 2 of the 4 projects. So it is our understanding that 2 of the 4 projects are being built, or have been built for all I know. And that is, in conjunction with that, you know that you also had a payment in lieu of taxes financial agreement with that project. And that pilot agreement would spin off a certain amount of revenue to the city, and that would offset the debt service the city would bear. That was the deal that had been.
There was a deal. I thought it was that we issued for $14 million NJCU for actually JHRA as a redevelopment bond, and that project will be paid off.
Well, I think the expectation is that the debt is being paid off by pilot payments being made, but there's no direct linkage. It is a financial matching, but there's no linkage. And at least that's the way it was presented in the documentation that of course I review as your bond counsel. There was a cooperation agreement between the city and the JCRA and New Jersey City University. And the idea, as I understand it, is that New Jersey City University would build the infrastructure in order for the vertical developments to be built. They would advance the funds, and the city would reimburse New Jersey City University from this bond issue once it was clear that the vertical projects were moving forward. We're not just going to be, holes in the ground, that there would actually be a built project. Once there was an assurance that there would be a built project, because construction crews are mobilized, construction is actually beginning, then there is a relative surety that pilot payments will be generated from that project. And it's the pilot payments that would provide X dollars to the city, of which a portion of that X dollars would go to compensate for this debt service.
So, at the time, and I still remember that, my argument is that if private company built the infrastructure, if he's reimbursed, they're going to price any dollars they can want to say there. So while we do that, so that's why at the time, the JCRA will be issued a redevelopment bond, and those projects will be paid off. So we are actually guaranteed that they will pay off that bond. That's what we
to the extent of the infrastructure.
The fee as a separate.
Right, no, I agree. I understand it, but the city was only willing to commit the $16 million of infrastructure funding if there was a certainty that the project would be built and that the pilot payments would be paid.
Then my next question, do they prove the NJCU to spend $14 million for infrastructure? How are we going to be auditing their numbers, the true numbers or not?
The spending information as a condition to the disbursement of the money by the city to the New Jersey City University, New Jersey City University had to provide financial backup to show the expenses that were paid and to show that those costs were related to the infrastructure. The city has so far honored, I believe, 2 invoices, one for each of the 2 projects, I believe.
Do they audit it? City of Jersey audited their bill?
The NJ City University provided the backup. The backup went to the city engineer. The city engineer signed off on it, and that gave the finance department approval to honor the requisition. So yes.
See, sounds like we never make a deal like that, really. But I want to make sure. So now.
No, but I mean, I hear you, but I do want to assure you that it was a conscious decision at the time that the city needed to make a contribution, but would only make the contribution if it knew that it would get paid back by the pilot.
Okay.
And I think that was a sound decision.
So now another one is that we're going to be refinancing every year. Every time we do refinancing, it's cost of taxpayer. So last time when we do the refinancing, as we discussed, almost cost us taxpayer $300,000. So now this one is almost 2015, 16, 13, 18, continue refinancing. Every time we refinance, cost is $300,000. Just bond council cost is $300,000.
Well, if I was making $300,000, I wouldn't be sitting here tonight. I apologize. That was just a joke. But no, my fee is nowhere near.
So when they refinance, in the normal case, when you refinancing, if the interest much lower than current interest, we do refinancing. So in this case, why we not do just one time, 5 years of note instead of do refinancing every year?
All right. So the answer is twofold. For special emergency notes, you're only allowed to issue 1-year notes and retire all of your notes within 5 years. That's the statutory requirement. They don't give you the option to do anything longer than 1 year. Bond anticipation.
Not longer than 1 year.
Right. Now that's for special emergency notes. For bond anticipation notes, as we've discussed last time, you always have a choice between going to permanent bonds or going to notes. So you could do, in theory, a 5 or a 10-year bond issue.
Right.
The way that I would analyze it here is that for the $15 million for the Bayfront project, the Series H, because the city's objective is to pay off the notes with the proceeds of sale of the property, and because the time horizon in which that's going to happen is relatively short, that it doesn't make sense to do long-term debt.
Okay.
For the $14 million, you have a valid consideration. It is always the question: do you go long? Do you go short? I think the finance department could be forgiven for saying $14 million is a relatively small amount to go to the public bond issue for, and the current interest rate environment for both short and long-term debt is about the same. But you raise a valid point, and I will pass it along to the finance department so that they could reanalyze it. But it's not my call as your lawyer to tell you whether to go short or long.
So we just did a rollover a few months ago. I can't remember exactly what it was, and we got a much lower interest rate. And I apologize, we were supposed to get a report to the council on this, but we'll get it to you soon. And we saved a lot of money doing that.
Okay, so Brian,
Yeah.
when we get the low interest, the low interest rate actually saving is more than what our cost for the.
Oh, much more. Yes.
Much more?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
I'll get you the
number
report.
one.
Yeah.
And number two,
Yeah. Interest rates are good right now. So
the way
so
that
it's
our
okay.
bond company will say that, make sure when we sell the land, the front, pay off that bond. You know,
Yes. Yes, and I will give you a preview. This is the $15 million for Bayfront. Just as a history reminder, last year, the JCRA needed the $15 million in December because they were closing on the property acquisition, and they needed the money. They needed at least $9 or $10 million of that 15 to place a deposit on the property that was required by December. The most of the purchase price for the property acquisition came in a note issue that happened in January. And so a month from now, we're going to come back to you with the same discussion concerning the January notes. So when you see the $15 million, I wanted you to know that there's another $83.4 million that was borrowed in January for the same purpose, with the same considerations, the same idea that there's going to be.
You can't kind of combine them into one.
Well, we could, but we don't want to. We could do that, but to do that, you would accelerate your pay down obligation at some point for the 83. I think there was a thought that the 83 point. Remember, I mentioned there was a pay down after the third anniversary date. That first borrowing in January won't have to have a mandatory pay down until 2023, 2022. It's whatever it is, but it's a year after. If you were to roll that over with this one, then you'd effectively advance that pay down into an earlier annual budget than you would have to. So we will discuss that with finance, but at this point they haven't decided to split it up.
So Brian, this is a little bit what Councilman Junior was asking. Just CFO or whoever, it's John, just provide us with like some understanding of why these choices are made.
Right.
So when we're voting on it, we can understand like, why was there a rollover versus a long-term issue, why are these
Okay.
Just so we understand the choice, because this is simply issuing a statement. And
Yes.
It doesn't help us understand like the choice behind it.
Okay. And just make sure that when we sell the land of the Bayfront, make sure to pay off the bond.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's the way we can move on.
We capitalized the first year of interest in the initial debt, so we have no issues there. But yeah, so once we start selling these
So
properties,
the reason I'm asking that here, so we have around the $780 million out there, our total gross bond, outstanding bond, $780 million, almost $800 million. And the plus we pay yearly was $78 million a bond, the principal interest. So we got to put some effort to pay off the outstanding bond. You know what I'm saying?
And I should actually, just for completeness, say that the JCRA is meeting with the city, I believe, the next week, the 30th, to discuss whether they need additional funds during 2020. Again, as I mentioned, the ordinance that was adopted authorized up to $170 million worth of city debt for this project. So far, only 98 has been actually borrowed. They may come back with a capital request, and if they do, it's likely that we would add that to the January issuance, unless they don't need it until June, in which case we'd add it to the June
All right, so we
issuance.
discussed that one. All right, good.
How are we on accumulated assets for this year?
I forget exactly where we are with that.
I guess in the budget we didn't put any money in. So
Yeah.
I just am wondering if we're going to need to
I don't think that we're going to do that, but we'll see where we are. I don't know.
And also, Brian, can you provide the cost of the bond council for this full bond issue?
Yeah, can you provide the...
Because we're going to have $44 million of the bond.
Yeah, sure.
I'd like to have a total cost of the refinancing for $44 million, including the bond council and other fees involved, okay?
We need to wrap this up.
All right.
If anyone else has further questions, I'm sure Mr. Fiorina is available.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before he leaves, I just want everyone to know, in 2001, he got a standing ovation in the city council chambers. First for a bond council in the state of, probably in the world.
And the last.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This isn't the earlier question, the earlier thing on the abatement, is my understanding is the full set of details were discussed publicly tonight. So
Okay.
I would assume that means we can discuss them here then.
All right.
I assume so as well.
Roll on.
All right.
We're going to do Mr. Lynch or Ms. Weller?
I think Mr. Wells.
Mr. Weller, I guess.
I'll close the night out.
No, we got Sammy too.
So, Council
Maybe we just
President?
got the trees.
Council President?
Since you're filling in for
Council President?
filling in, it's doing this now, so there's no filling in.
Council President?
That means you have to
Yes, sir.
subtract
Okay,
Brian
so
and
I have
Ms.
I'm sorry, one at a time.
But don't make a habit of it.
Hold on.
My leg is swollen,
Yes.
because of the infection.
Oh, you need to get
So I'm
up.
going to excuse myself.
Sure.
Feel better, Council?
Yes.
Feel better?
Feet up.
I know, but, this is.
All right.
Let him go.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Yeah, he has to go too, and Sammy too. Okay, come on, let's motor through this. We got two more folks and then the rest of the agenda. Brian has 10.2 and 10.3.
That's correct.
10.2 is a
Resolution rejecting all bids for a contract known as City Hall side entrance. That would be the north entrance, Brian?
North and south entrance stairs.
North and south.
North and south, yes.
Take care of yourself.
Yep.
Do you need some help getting out, or are you okay?
So as council may be aware, the condition of the side stairs is deteriorating rapidly, and we have done all the preliminary engineering work, architectural work, plans and specifications, and put it out to public bid, and did not have a very good response. So at this point, and they both exceed the budget amount that we had set aside. So I think that it's in the city's best interest to make a couple small revisions to the plans and put it back out to public bid and see what kind of response we get on a second try.
If I could just, it says did not use the revised documents, so they used like old documents?
They did not acknowledge the addendum that went out, and that's not allowed.
What is the addendum?
The addendum was to correct a couple of clarifications in the documents.
But I guess without knowing what those were, they were very close to the budget.
It's a purchasing.
It's a pro forma
It's just if they don't
local public contracts law, if we don't do it, we're in violation.
Yeah.
of the local
Correct.
public contracts law.
Yeah, there's no option.
How do you just, not just this vendor, but any vendor, how do they know that an addendum's an issue?
If you sign up through BidSync, and the only way to download RP is through BidSync, every person who downloads the RP is sent electronically a copy of that. They have to then reply back. They actually attach something to their response. It's an acknowledgement of addendum.
Yeah, they have to acknowledge at the time. So unfortunately, in this case, there's really nothing we can do except reject the bids and.
There's kind of an upside. Everybody knows what the bid was, and it came in kind of reasonable, and they know they might have to beat it. It might be a better price next time.
It's possible.
I think it's in the city's best interest.
Fair enough. As long as City Hall doesn't fall.
No, City Hall Foundation is good.
Okay.
The stairs, though, stay off.
Yeah.
Never out.
It would be cheaper to put a slide in.
3 is rejecting
You're
all
not gonna get
bids
to the
on
historic.
Reservoir 3, the gatehouse. Number 2, stabilization and mothballing.
Okay, similar scenario on this job, except that, as most people know, Reservoir 3 is a very difficult site to access, and so the costs were exponential. To merely try to stabilize one of the structures. And so I don't even have anywhere close to this money budgeted for this work. The only real option is to reject all the bids, and we will reassess the situation and move forward.
You say reassess the situation, reassess your budget?
Well, right now I have a grant from Hudson County of $50,000 and some capital money for reservoir projects at about 100, so I have 150,000. And we're trying to find something productive that we can do at the reservoir as we march forward and keep making changes to the reservoir.
It's so substantially far away, right? It's like,
yeah, that's
how
why.
do you get there?
Well, that's why we're going to have to look at the bare bones as to what we can possibly do to try to stabilize. And what I say by stabilize is that the deterioration of that structure, all the structures out there, they're almost ready to collapse. And it is a national registered site, so we need to do something to start trying to slow the bleeding and stabilize. So
Wait, 3 years, I mean,
I think
4 years,
I think
5
long.
years.
I think maybe longer than that, actually.
Yeah, I know.
So we're going to keep, trying to push forward. I think the plan is going to be to work closely, a little more closely with DPW, to see what we can do in-house instead of trying to get a contractor to come in and make all these stabilization projects. Of course, in capital requests, you might see some
Brian,
requests.
fix the fence so those kids stop getting in there.
We're working on that.
That's another 3 years.
We're working on that.
There's gonna be a horrible accident up there.
I'm talking about the ornamental fence. You're talking about the.
I'm talking about the back fences.
Okay,
They never
that's
completed correctly.
That's DPW, and I'd be happy to help out, but that's.
You mean that's John Boy?
Well, DPW has a fence contract, so if there's some area of the fence that needs to be fixed, we can get it fixed.
Which part?
On the side, on Summit Avenue, they climb up the wall.
We're gonna be bringing them up.
Go into the reservoir.
Thank you, Brian
Okay.
Weller, and,
Thank you, Council.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for
All part of the
patience.
service.
I just want to point out, Brian Platt.
Me?
Yep.
Okay.
Just for the record, that, and I'm not looking at any stats, but it just seems to me that we've got a number of rejections of bids.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting take a look at what's going on there. It could just be coincidence, I mean that.
Yeah.
But I also know, like, Peter Falgado kind of leaving, I don't know if anything's changing there, but you may want to just take a look and see.
Yeah, no, it's just, these are just coincidental. We get a lot of acceptances of bids too. Yeah, so Peter's still there and helping keep the ship afloat, so.
Oh, is he still with us?
Yeah, he's doing part-time. We're transitioning a lot of people in the office to move up internally, so, but yeah, he's still with us part-time until probably December, January, somewhere in that range.
You guys arm wrestle for it? Who's next, or?
Sammy.
Sammy, come on up. Sammy's at 10.9. I had my money on you, Sammy.
That's a resolution authorizing the renewal of an open-end contract with Schichtel's Nursery.
Yes. Good evening, Council. To the left of me, I have our senior forester, Mr. Edward O'Malley. I thought it'd be a good experience for him to come and sit here and address any concerns.
Oh my God.
So thank you for saving us for last. And I'm not gonna let him answer anything
That was
inaccurate.
literally
or
amazing
anything.
that you just put him through that.
I'll make sure nothing, Edward's very knowledgeable on all these things. He's got all the information he needs in front of him.
Sit down and join us.
Hands-on with it, so I'm gonna give him the seat here. And
Mr. O'Malley, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the city. I know you've been on the job a while, but welcome to the City Council Caucus.
Great to be here. Yeah, so this is just for the renewal of the open-ended contract with Schnitzel's Nursery. These are the trees we use to plant through the citywide contract. Basically, this is just keeping the contract open. This amount would roughly give us the amount to plant 350 trees.
350 trees?
Yeah.
Where are you from? Where are you from?
South Jersey originally. Yeah, but I live right down the road, right down the street.
So the trees that we do on these, Do we track where these trees are all going?
We keep records of all the planting locations. Most of this comes through the request through the plant a tree application. For the most part, those are the locations we use. There are some park locations and community centers, kind of things of that nature as well.
Can you map? Is that mapped out on a tree map?
We will, maybe not on a tree map, but we can do that.
And they are documented. Everything's documented on paper. We have a tree supplier and we have the tree planters, and whenever we plant in-house, as Ed was saying, whether it be a city-owned property like City Hall, the Bethune Center and such, we do have it documented.
Could we get a list of where the plantings are for the past 3 years? It looks like. Is that readily available, or is that something that has to be compiled?
I mean,
It'd have to take a little time.
It'll take a little time to do. That's a lot. That's a lot of information. I mean, we'll provide it to you, but we have to put it all together.
If it was readily available, I'm not asking.
I mean, we just have to put it all into one.
If it was readily available, I would ask. It's not readily available.
With the company, how do you guys, so now the trees are all under warranty, correct? So how do you track trees that didn't make it year over year to make sure that we're getting replaced in addition to the ones we're already getting?
So.
And I know you're brand new, but answer the question.
Right. So basically, what I've been doing is Ezra, the junior forester, he's been out at least inspecting what he can and compiling databases from recently planted trees. As far as now 2 years back or so, we haven't had the time to go that far back for inspections, but
Go ahead.
You just started, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you said 2 years back.
He said they couldn't.
We haven't had time to go that far back yet.
Right now, their assignment is to go back that far, but they just started with the relative, just probably this year's plantings alone, maybe. Maybe they got into late last year, but they're working backwards to check. Because now that, to be perfectly honest, Councilman, illustrious council, when we were charging for trees, I think it was a lot easier to track them, because if somebody's tree died, they would be the first one to call and say, my tree's dead. Now that they're free, people are kind of like, oh, well, we could wait or whatever here and there. But to be perfectly honest, that's why we want to renew Schitzel's, because their trees are just amazing. They really are. But I'll let Ed finish.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a high quality caliber. From what I've seen, they are clearly grown by professionals. They're well maintained. Good branch structure. You don't want to get into it.
When they plant them like around St. Joseph's, you did for me, Sandy, remember the 6, 7 trees? They have to come back and water them. We had a couple die because we had no rain for quite a while, and then we started watering them in the neighborhood. They have to water the trees they plant out in the street.
Yeah, and that's something we recently had a meeting with the contractor about, that they need to be, as per the contract, notifying us with a 24, 48 hours advance notice, and anything to do with any of the trees, so that we can try to schedule ourselves to be able to do spot inspections. So what, if they're saying they're watering, we need to be able to see actual physical eyes on it, so we know in fact that they actually are. They're not just saying, oh, we watered those trees.
Do they bag them?
The gator bags?
Yeah.
Some of them, I don't think it's mandatory
No, it's not
necessarily.
mandatory, no.
Yeah.
They won't bag them all.
So,
Councilman Sullivan.
the contract amount is for 74, almost 75K, and this year spent so far 50K. And I don't know how we count these contracts if this one is starting new. Is that basically saying we only spent 50K in the contract and now we're starting over again with this new contract?
We would be starting over again, that is correct. And remember, I just want you to remember that we also just finished up the big CSIP grant with the last contract, so we're kind of like doing 2 contracts at the same time, so, we're really balancing, and that was without our foresters.
Are we still doing both contracts?
No, right now we're just maintaining the trees as per the CSIP grant, so we have to just,
The CSIP grant wasn't renewed or?
No, that was just a grant, there was, yeah.
So do we think the 75K is enough to meet the kind of need? I don't know, the existing applications in backlog right now?
Currently, I would say that is a sufficient amount. Based off of what I've already put in an order for this fall, we're right about on target with the request.
For this fall. Correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't really publicized the fact that we waived the $200 fee, correct?
publicize it?
Yeah, like I don't recall a sort of after the world.
That's a good point. I don't think we did like press around it necessarily, and we could talk about doing that.
Because I think, you know, obviously I'm biased here. I think Councilman agrees with me, the whole council hopefully, but then, you know, this is a public amenity they provide.
Yeah.
Every dollar we spend on it returns, you know, many benefits back to us. So, you know, if we kind of let people know, hey, you can get these now, you don't have to pay $20, you know, we might see more, and this to me is everything that's worth investing in.
We're also lining up some additional funding sources as well, so hopefully, like as we go through the winter, we'll do another big planting in the winter as well.
So where are we with the water truck?
It's here.
Where? It's hanging out on the street. No, if we're going to be ramping to the council's point, if we're going to be ramping up free plantings for people, we do need to have things in place to make sure that the trees are successful. Otherwise, that there's really no point. And that's also includes robust education around what the residents should be doing, understanding the timing of the year and how that relates to watering, and letting them know that if we do have some sort of city truck, maybe there's a way as the trees go in, we can create the checklist to, not that they're not already doing that, but to create that, so it's working in tandem. Because we've been talking about a water truck for a couple of years now,
Well, we actually had a water truck, everything. We were just having some vehicular issues, which led us to go and sit down with our contractor, MJ Hogue, what was that, a week ago, I believe, or so? And just like, probably like 2 weeks ago, Councilwoman, in which myself and Ed, we sat down with him, and we explained to him exactly what Ed said. You know, we have to hold you more accountable. Let us know, give us at minimum 24-hour notice, only on work days. We're here from 8 to 4, and we're gonna be sending the junior forester or a supervisor of forestry to go there and confirm that they are indeed watering the plants, because in all actuality, I mean, that's a great luxury for us to have, but by contract, the tree planters are required to water the trees that they have planted.
Including house trees, so for example, the tree at my house.
The newly planted ones, not pre-existing like, you know, sycamores, anything like that are within the town. Whatever they've planted, they should be watering.
It's a 2-year window.
Yeah.
So they're responsible for that tree they plant 2 years from the planting date. To water that, basically watering is at the discretion of the forester as the contract reads. So if it's really wet, you know, it's kind of more of a conversation with them and myself saying, you know, you don't need to water right now, we're getting plenty of rain. But when we do have those dry spells, it's kind of activate the watering, and that's, according to the contract, something
Okay, so that's new for this year?
No.
Not last year, the year before?
It's the same contract.
Yeah, we're pretty much able now with having a forester, and you know, I've added a couple more guys to forestry. Thankfully, you know, I'm sure you're all familiar with our new director and everything. She's been awesome in allowing us to have more personnel and everything. So I've been able to go and put more guys in forestry. Granted, not as many as we need, but more than what we had before. So now we're able to be more hands-on with these contractors, as opposed to going, you know, we only have a few guys in forestry. Can we really afford to have one guy go with a contractor all day watching him water? So, you know.
I mean, that's right. This is actually the first time I've been hearing that they're doing this, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's good.
You're a forester?
Yes.
Okay. You're not planting trees during the winter, are you?
Yes, we are. Dormant season is the best.
This is, well, not yet. This is a very thin line here. So let me just say that, you know.
It's weather dependent. I'll say that. It's weather dependent.
Yeah. So right now we're planting in the fall. We're shooting to plant in the fall. So.
Tree farm, I think they call that just the woods.
So, and then under your role, so for the management of all of these plantings, all that's you and the junior forester, or how's it going to be working now?
Basically, at this point, I've tasked Ezra, the junior forester, to provide daily supervision to the contractor. I don't currently have that flexibility in my schedule. So he's going to basically take the lead in the field, and I'll be more so dealing with the paperwork, the management, the behind-the-scenes management of it, coordinating with the contractors and, you know, the record keeping.
We're glad to have you guys. Long overdue.
The comment about the education for folks, I'd love to know if we do see demand pick up, you know, and this contract doesn't meet demand, I'd love to kind of talk about
At this point, it's going to meet the demand because we already have all the applications in and we're about to plant. But yeah, for the winter, yeah, we have other funding sources in place. So we're good. What? For spring of next year?
Where is he?
No.
That'll be coming up soon.
We'll probably, we should talk about this, about how we're gonna accept applications for that. We're gonna make it a little easier than it was before, I think, so, but, yeah. Because now there's no fee involved with it, it's just sort of like, where do you want to trade it? It's not really.
Okay, folks,
Thank you.
done?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
You get
The
a
first
tree.
of many.
You get a tree.
Welcome, man.
Go first next time.
I figured it's just amazing.
You're welcome.
Get you making checks you can't cash then.
I'm sorry.
Writing checks you can't
You get overtime for this? Is that what
Am I? I don't know. It's up to you, man. You're the one who can approve that, right?
Which we all have to, yeah, right.
All right, so John Lynch.
Yes, 10-7 and 10-10.
10-7, 10-10. 10-7 is a resolution authorizing the award of an open-end contract to Cintas Corporation for the rental of uniforms for the Department of Public Works, the U.S. Communities Cooperative Purchasing Program. Okay,
Any questions?
Any questions?
no questions.
10-10.
10-10.
10-10.
It's a month-to-month extension not to exceed 3 months of a contract with Canon Solutions America for leasing and maintenance, including all supplies of 10 color copier machines effective October 1st, 2019, for various locations citywide for the Department of Public Works.
Yeah, so this is just a follow-up from last time I was here when we did the black and white copiers to extend the contract through the end of the year. And this is for the 10 color copiers. I mean, we do expect to have a bit select partner, either Rico or Ken at this point, by the end of November.
Any questions, council members? John, sorry to keep you.
No problem. We can't make it a habit because cutting into my gym night, how am I going to catch up to this guy?
You just won't. Just give up.
A little too much disaster.
See how they treat us, Mr. Burns? We get older. This is how we get treated.
So, wait,
Young guys come in.
Councilperson
back
Whitley.
up, I'm sorry, I was like slow getting to the resolutions. 10-7, the uniforms, right?
Yeah.
So we rent the uniforms, like each person doesn't have their own uniform? Like
Yeah,
what type of uniforms are
actually get the numbers. We actually have 11 uniforms for each person, right?
How many?
11.
Each person?
Yeah. 11 pairs, and so at no time any employee would be out without a uniform.
But we rent
Wash them in the washing machine. Then you
What's
take
that?
them up, drop
No,
them.
it's part of the contract. The company cleans them and everything. Yeah, they come and pick them up and stuff. Yeah, we do.
So do we do it that way because I guess it's difficult because of whatever it is, the reflectors and stuff?
Yeah,
It's
the
difficult for
different them to needs,
maintain
and it's
all.
actually part of it comes with the union contract, and one of the reasons why we need to renew this and everything is because there's been some grievances filed that the uniforms are 2 years old.
That's a lot of uniforms,
If they're wearing it every day though, out there working.
Aren't they
And they
seasonal?
can't wash them.
John?
Some are, yeah.
They're seasonal. Some of them are summer weight, winter weight, jackets. It's 11 pieces.
Yeah, 11
It's not
pieces.
It's not a
Right,
full
right,
uniform.
throughout the year. Lighter for the
Jackets,
summer,
shirt,
winter.
t-shirt, yeah. And the reason why they get sent out for cleaning is some of them can get contaminated with certain types of materials that are hard to dispose of, so we need some else.
And that's all included in the contract.
I don't care what you say.
Any other questions, council members?
That's a lot.
Okay. Thank you, John.
You're welcome, thank you.
John, go back to your old job. We need you. No, they transferred him to someplace else.
And then, Rich wants me to be more about acting equality.
Okay. Okay, let's go from the top. Folks.
All right, ordinances from the top. I know we did the bottom one, so let's do the rest of them. 3.1 was done, obviously. 3.2, we're amending the traffic code to limit the issuance of on-street residential permit parking to properties within the Journal Square 2060 redevelopment plan area for occupancy on or before December 31st, 2019. and 2, amending Chapter 257 property transfers to require disclosure of this prohibition to residents of these buildings.
This is from Councilman Boggiano.
What?
This is your ordinance.
Hold on, I'm looking up a question I have to ask him after, okay.
Okay.
What were you saying?
Yeah, this is your ordinance, Councilman, on the amending the parking.
Yes.
And this is when Mayor Fulop was a councilman, he did an ordinance to require that people know about the prohibition of residents parking on the street if they had parking in the building, because landlords weren't telling them there.
Isn't that applicable already, or like?
Yeah, it is, but this is just reiterating it, so, for this area.
We ain't enforcing it, that's the problem.
That's the problem, it's not the law, it's the
Right.
laws.
When we gave it to the law department upstairs, John created this ordinance. I think it's different from the other ordinance. There's a lot of differences in it. So, it's not the same.
It's not the same, okay?
No.
So, I mean, I don't want to belabor the point,
Right.
I'll speak to John and just figure out what the differences are, but
Right.
if yours is better, then we should just upgrade it for everyone, right?
Yeah, instead of for a certain area.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we're getting cremated with so much
No,
development.
I agree with you, it should not be.
I think the ordinance was universal anyway.
It was.
Just- Okay, 3.3 is an ordinance amending solid waste, chapter 287, refuse receptacles, approved containers and plastic bags to allow property owners or their agents to obtain a permit to place refuse receptacles on the curb on the day before collection earlier than 7 p.m., but not before 4 p.m.
I have a question on that one.
Council President Ridley,
So,
this is from Councilman Boggiano.
Yeah.
Before we proceed, Councilman, do you want to say anything about your ordinance, or?
No, just,
Self-explanatory?
yeah.
but this is for the entire city, right? For,
It is.
Technically, yeah, I think that's the way it reads, but anyone, the property owner would have to petition the city and get approved for this.
so, why don't we just change the time to 5? Why are we charging people to put their garbage out 2 hours earlier?
Change this ordinance to say 5, or change it citywide to be 5,
Change it
period?
citywide to 5 o'clock, everybody put your garbage
We
out.
get a lot of complaints about garbage in the street while people are walking home from work and that sort of thing.
It's
So,
always after 7.
right now it's 7 o'clock or later, yeah.
They gave my daughter a ticket at 5, they gave St. Joseph's a ticket.
So my question, Councilman Boggiano,
Yeah.
I understand the premise of this, but how is this enforced? Like, how does somebody know if somebody?
Nothing's enforced in this city, I mean, let's be honest.
Okay.
You know,
This is the day before the election, earlier than 7.
it's true.
I thought you couldn't put garbage out only on the day of.
Yes, so right now the law is on the night before your collection date, you
Right.
can put your garbage out after 7 p.m.
Right.
The concern from Councilman Boggiano, as we understand it, is there are businesses and nonprofits, for example, that close before 7, they close at
The
5.
church.
You're right, at church, so they can't put the garbage, they have to send someone back
To do
at 7
it.
o'clock to put garbage out. Instead of having that issue, just allow a small number of these businesses an exception to say, okay, you can put it out at 4 or 5, or whenever you close for the day.
But they have to pay for that exception.
I actually don't remember if there's anything
right?
about.
There's no-
We didn't put the garbage out early.
So they just have to get the permit, but it's
Have to
not
get
a fee for the
approved.
permit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it could, by this residential residents could do this as well.
You should put businesses or something too, really.
Yeah,
clear.
some sort of entities.
Commercial properties,
Commercials.
yes, we could do that. We can make it
Let's put
commercial properties,
commercial.
if you're okay with that, Councilman.
Well, the problem is you have people that are like, especially during the summer, will go away, they come home from work at 4, they're going away at 5. And, you know,
But
they're not gonna be there at 7.
What is wrong with 5 o'clock? So I've had residents reach out to me asking, especially during the winter months, because it gets dark so early and they're older, they maybe, have a handicap or disability, if they could do the same thing. So.
We could, okay, yeah, we could try it out with everyone and see what kind of interest we get, and then go
In
from
2
there.
weeks, it's gonna be dark at 4:45.
Yeah.
No, this is Danny. Danny, you can't put the garbage out now until 7 o'clock.
That's actually very practical. It's very practical. Depending on daylight savings time and all that.
My daughter got a ticket. 5:45, I think. It's a ticket.
But that's sometimes just putting it up to our own, it's gonna be a mess. I understand
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
You understand that. So that's
I mean, look, it's Councilman Bogiano's ordinance, so it's up to council.
Yeah, so if you,
Yeah, but people, like I said, during the summer especially, or older people, they don't want to come out at night, so they put it out at 5. You know, it's hard on people. Like St. Joseph's Church got a ticket a couple of weeks ago. They put it out at 5 o'clock. I mean, come on, give me a break. They're there 150 years. They never got a ticket in 150 years.
So you're getting older, buddy, Dad.
You was there 150 years.
all right, so,
I don't care, what?
I think other folks have different ideas on the application of it.
You're starting this dialogue, Councilman.
Why don't you, everybody just stay in dialogue with Mr. Bogiano
Yeah,
and figure it out.
we could wait, we could amend this again, you know, but the thing is they're giving tickets out now, and yeah, especially seniors, and, like you said, the darkness is coming, and people don't want to go out at 7 o'clock.
Okay. Let's keep moving along.
Okay, an ordinance designating Park Street and Prescott Street as an all-way stop intersection. 3.5, designating angled parking on the west side of Whitman Avenue, south of SIP. We spoke about 3.6, the rec ordinance.
Carrying over some items here, right?
Sorry, sir? We're at second reading ordinances. We have the ever-present Jersey Avenue light rail. I don't know if this kid might be James.
It's ours.
Redevelopment
We
plan.
enjoy it.
That includes an affordable housing provision. It's holding a record for most consecutive appearances on a council agenda. So what are we doing, buddy?
Carrying it over.
Bumping
We had
it?
a bunch of meetings last week.
Okay.
Moving in
Why
the right
not?
direction, but still carry.
That can has a lot of dents.
Why not table it and then untable it when you're ready?
Just correct me if I'm wrong, is you can't table before
Right.
public hearing.
Oh, so
It's a no way.
okay. So you don't want, okay, got
We don't
it.
wanna like.
You don't want to do public hearing, that's what, okay, got it.
Right.
Sure.
Right, so we'll keep going.
Same thing with 4.2, or what do you,
Yes.
okay? We got 4.3,
Keep with each other, Robert. We see which one wins.
Hey, listen.
Pulling
No, we're just pulling.
Hey, it's the hare and the tortoise. 4.3 is a traffic ordinance designating Crescent and Astor Place as a multi-way stop intersection. Likewise, 4.4 is a traffic ordinance, no parking certain hours on the west side of James Avenue. That's an industrial avenue at the end of St. Paul's
I don't think there's any
in a part of
questions.
town you don't want to be because it's really ugly and dirty. 4.5, it's industrial. 4.5 is an ordinance of the Municipal Council adopting amendments to the highway mixed-use zone of the Water Street redevelopment plan. 4.6, am I gonna go through or?
No, I don't think we need to.
Okay.
Just on
good.
4.9, I
Love
know
it.
Tanya left. I thought did you say anything about 4.9?
Not that I remember.
Could you,
She did it the first time.
no, she whispered something to me before she left. Can you just check with her?
On
On 4.9, I don't recall. My apologies, I just don't, my memory isn't great
Okay.
these days.
Can I jump to the resos, Councilman? All right, 10.1, we are authorizing the use of competitive contracting for financial advisory services. We did 10.2 through 10.7, 8.
Could I just ask on the financial advisors?
Yes. Yeah,
This
yeah.
is NW?
So right now we did I can't remember how we contracted before with NW, but this would allow us to it's a open, fair and open process where we're doing an RFP, but also it will allow us to get multiple vendors for this sort of thing. So I know it's been a question of the council. Can we get a second opinion, for example, on certain financial analyses? This will allow us to do that. It would also allow us to include other vendors for certain specific types of financial advisory services, if we didn't want to go with NW or whoever it would be.
So in terms of the RFP, as it goes out, I'd like to see the RFP before it.
We talked about not doing that.
You can't see that.
Okay, so I guess I'll just suggest that I'd like to see it include that some language that relates to in matters related to the city council, maybe requesting some services or such that they actually are, what's the word, accountable to the city council around those matters.
What do you mean by that?
Well, look, I mean, there's been things that the council's requested that the administration has not, in terms of financial analyses and so forth. And in those circumstances, where it might be legally permissible, that we're not having to, that we're able to work with them directly in some way. Is that not? When it's something that the council is looking to accomplish.
Well, the council under the Faulkner Act does not have a right to independently contract out to the administration. So whatever if the only way that would be possible is if the administration decided to contract, and the administration put that forward for council approval for a vendor to do that for the council. So it's not something the council could independently do.
Are there times when we didn't provide an analysis for things, or?
At least one.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know.
But I will. I don't want to belabor this. We'll just move on. It's fine.
Okay.
All right, then 10.8. I thought we saw this on an agenda before, authorizing liens against property.
It's a new set of properties.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
the
same thing you're seeing.
I didn't look at the schedule attached.
Yep.
It's liens for people who aren't keeping their properties up, brush, weeds, dead and dying trees.
And these are the ones we removed.
Noxious growths.
These are
properties. Garbage, litter, and debris.
These are properties the city's already removed it. It's just a matter of asserting the lien so the city gets paid for doing the service that it provided.
Very good.
All right, we did 10.9 and 10.10. 10.11. An emergency contract with JP Patty Tecta America for repairs to the salvage steel structure building, facade, and canopy at the Municipal Services Complex. Wow.
Yeah, so when we were installing the covering material on the roof there, we found some structural issues that we had to change to make sure it could support both the weight of the solar panels, but also there was just some water leakage that was coming through, so we had to make some fixes to that. I will say also that we've redesigned the parking lot at Public Works to make sure that all of our I think actually every single one of our municipal vehicles will be covered under this structure now. So instead of sitting out in the sun and the rain, it will now be under this cover protected structure. It will help ensure a little bit longer life for some vehicles.
Is any of the damage under warranty?
Yeah, and Rolando asked about that, and I forgot to follow up on this, but I'm gonna check on that.
Okay, 10.12 is to apply for a Sustainable Jersey grant for energy efficiency outreach and education efforts. 13, contract.
Could we get a copy of, there was nothing in here with regard to what they would be doing with the grant other than.
Yeah, that should have been included. There's a second version of this going around, and I don't know where it went, but that should be included. Let me follow up about that.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Moving forward to 13. This is to Jersey Cares to conduct arts and crafts activities like you at the Joseph Connors Senior Center.
That's the thing up on Patterson Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is what's wrong. They took half the stuff out of Pershing Field and put it over there. and eliminated some other stuff. This is why it should go back to recreation and take it out of, doesn't belong in the health department. And the seniors up there, they're gonna walk from over Pershing Field all the way over to Patterson Street, especially at nighttime with winter coming. This is absolutely asinine.
Okay, is that the last word on that one? 14, 15, 16 are ceremonial, recognizing Filipino American History Month, remembering Harvey Little, and remembering Susan Patricia Herring. 1017 is a resolution we do every time we hire police or firemen. We send them for psych evaluations, and this is a contract with Forensic Psychology, PA, to do that for fire recruits. And we did 1018 with Jim Fearon, Super Bond Council.
That's it. Okay.
Someone sing the song, or you have
Yeah,
something to say,
just
Council
one thing
President?
before we part. So, council members, Rivera, I'm sorry, I apologize. So I forgot to bring this up earlier. The caucus, does 3 o'clock not work for you?
3 o'clock. I gotta get out of work at 3, so.
A little later?
3:34.
3:34? So
You don't call on time.
what's that? What's that?
I didn't say that.
So 3:30 would
So
be
3
bad.
o'clock would be great for Danny, because he'll get here right at the start.
How much in the county is?
Hey, relax.
What's that? I'm sorry.
3:30.
3:30?
3:30.
Can we, does that work for everyone, including the administration? Okay. Okay, so can we circulate something for 3:30 and start these caucuses at 3:30, starting at the next, can we get a resolution on this agenda?
Yeah, I can prepare a resolution.
Yeah.
To amend the council schedule to do the remainder of the caucuses for this calendar year at 3:30.
Yep.
And when I do in November, the annual notice for next year, I will so notice them as being 3:30, except for the summertime, I'm assuming.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay? Right, are we all in agreement about that?
Folks,
Summertime
and
still-
so, yep,
Yeah,
understood.
absolutely.
Okay. Keep
So
it
December
December.
4th, so that council meeting right before Thanksgiving, the caucus would be on the Monday before Thanksgiving, and then the council meeting December 4th, which is the Wednesday after Thanksgiving, right?
Thanksgiving is the 28th, 27 days before Christmas.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, I know, but
I'm sorry, just December, the caucus meeting would be at, I don't even remember the date, November 25th.
right, instead of doing it on Tuesday, the council president is proposing that we move it to the following week rather than having back-to-back days where we only have a caucus on a Monday and a meeting on a Tuesday.
It would be Wednesday, December 5th.
4th.
4th.
It was in the email that I sent you all, and you all said yes, so there you go.
So
Okay.
it'll be done.
Great.
I will be done. I will
Thank you.
do the resolution.
Motion makes it easier.
Second.
There are a bunch of songsters. I'm giving Councilperson Rivera and Councilperson Ridley. Absent at the end of the meeting is our injured friend.
I have a
Councilman.
6-year-old laptop.
We're out of here at 9:39. 51 minutes.
Hey, man,
Earlier than I predicted.
what's wrong with this guy, man?
Yay.
Y'all gotta watch Rich.
Hey, Brian, you only work